Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind, and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight, our journey drifts inward into the most mysterious universe we know, the one inside your own head, the human brain. It hums quietly beneath everything you see and feel, translating electric murmurs into dreams, memories, laughter, and the simple awareness that you are here. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these gentle explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, you can leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always comforting to imagine people scattered across the planet, New York, Nairobi, Seoul, or small towns whose names most maps forget, all falling slowly into the same quiet night, joined by a shared curiosity. Now, dim the lights if you wish. Maybe let a soft hum of a fan fill the background, or tuck yourself beneath a blanket that still smells faintly of sunlight. Allow your body to settle, your breath to slow. We're not in a rush. The story we're about to wander into has been unfolding for hundreds of thousands of years, ever since the first minds began to wonder what it means to have a mind at all. The question at the heart of tonight's journey is a gentle one, yet impossibly vast. How does a lump of silent tissue, 3 pounds of soft grey folds, create everything you know and feel? How do tiny sparks of electricity and waves of chemistry become love, fear, imagination, and the quiet thought of listening to your own heartbeat? Scientists call these sparks action potentials, the brief electric pulses that pass along each nerve cell. But you can think of them more simply, like the faint shimmer of fireflies in a summer field, each one flashing for an instant, passing its light to the next, until an entire meadow begins to glow. Those glimmers form the patterns of thought, the shape of memory, the melody of being you. Inside your skull, about 86 billion of these tiny firefly-like neurons rest in intricate clusters. They do not work alone. Each one reaches out through delicate branches, dendrites and axons, weaving a forest of connections so dense that if you could somehow count them all, you'd reach into the trillions. That's more connections than there are stars in the Milky Way. Yet all of it fits within the space between your ears, folded and layered like the petals of a sleeping flower. It's a paradox of scale, the most complex known structure in the universe, small enough to be cradled in 2 hands. What's even more wondrous is how quiet it is. Your brain runs on about the same energy as a small light bulb, and yet within that faint hum, it constructs entire worlds. Your sense of time, the face of a loved one, the scent of coffee, the memory of rain. It translates invisible waves of sound into music, turns pressure on your skin into comfort, and gathers the flickering photons of starlight into a picture of the night sky. Every second of your life, it's performing countless miracles, and doing so without applause. If we peek gently into its hidden rhythm, we find that each neuron is a kind of storyteller. It listens, it pauses, and then it passes the message onward through a small gap called a synapse. The message itself isn't a word or an image, but a pulse carried by small chemical messengers, neurotransmitters. Some of them, like dopamine, whisper excitement and reward. Others, like serotonin, bring calm and balance. A few, like glutamate or gamma-aminobutyric acid, nudge the conversation forward or quiet it down. Together they create an orchestra of invisible messengers, tuning your thoughts from loud to soft, from bright to dim. When you feel joy, grief, or the calm of understanding, it's this orchestra playing somewhere deep within you. Not loudly, but with exquisite precision. And yet, you never hear it. What you experience instead is the finished story, a thought that appears complete, as if whispered into existence. The brain does not announce its processes, it simply is. That quiet efficiency is what makes it so hard to grasp. We live inside it, and through it, yet we rarely sense the machinery behind the curtain. Trying to understand it is like a candle trying to study its own flame. Still, humanity has always tried. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have searched for metaphors large enough to capture the brain's mystery. The ancient Greeks imagined it as a vessel for breath, the seat of divine reason. In later centuries, it was compared to a clock, then to a telephone switchboard, and now to a network of galaxies or a vast computer. But none of those images quite capture it. The brain is both structure and song, both map and traveller. It's not just a device that processes information, it's a living story that writes itself as it reads. As you lie here listening, your own brain is quietly rearranging itself. The neurons that fire together begin to form stronger bonds, like friends growing closer through shared experiences. The pathways that rest will fade softly over time. Every moment of learning, every word you hear leaves a faint trace, as if the mind were brushing fresh snow with new footsteps. By the time the sentence ends, your brain will not be exactly as it was when it began. It's already changed, subtly, invisibly, but genuinely. That quiet flexibility, called neuroplasticity, is the secret to how we adapt, remember, and heal. And perhaps that is the most beautiful truth hidden in these folds of grey matter, that it never stops changing. Even now, as you breathe and drift, new connections bloom and old ones gently fade. The mind is never finished. It is a garden tended by thought itself, always reshaping its pathways, always learning how to be you. So, as we begin this gentle journey through the universe within, let yourself relax into the wonder of it. Feel the slight weight of your head on the pillow, that small planet of living light, floating quietly atop your shoulders. Every heartbeat sends a wave of life upward, feeding that delicate cosmos of cells. Every breath carries oxygen, the spark that keeps those electric whispers alive. You are both observer and creator, both the dreamer and the dream. The story we're about to wander through is already unfolding inside you, whether you're fully awake or halfway to sleep. All we have to do is listen to the quiet rhythm beneath it all, the silent music of being alive. If you could hold a human brain in your hands, you might be surprised by its simplicity of form. It feels soft, almost fragile, about the weight of a large grapefruit, warm from its own quiet chemistry. Yet within that modest bundle lies a universe of activity more intricate than any galaxy we've ever mapped. Scientists sometimes call it the most complex object in the known cosmos, and perhaps that's not exaggeration. For every one of its roughly 86 billion nerve cells, there are thousands upon thousands of connections, like branches intertwining in a forest so dense that light barely passes through. These connections, trillions of them, are the threads from which thought itself is woven. It's strange to think that something so immense in function could be so small in space. If we compare it to the stars, the brain easily wins in complexity. The Milky Way holds about 100 billion stars. Your brain holds nearly that many neurons, but each neuron can form up to 10,000 connections, sending signals in all directions at once. It's as if the night sky itself decided to start talking, each star whispering to every other, forming patterns not of light, but of meaning. Every thought you have, from the taste of your favourite meal to the memory of your first heartbreak, is one of those patterns blooming for an instant before dissolving into another. And yet, for all its grandeur, the brain works in near silence. It hums along at about 20 watts of power, the same as a dim bedside bulb. Imagine that. Everything you've ever known or imagined, powered by less energy than it takes to keep a small lamp glowing through the night. The real marvel is not the brain's strength, but its grace. It doesn't shout, it whispers. Its signals, called nerve impulses, travel as gentle waves of electricity, not like lightning bolts, but like ripples across a still pond. Each wave carries information, a fragment of thought or sensation, moving at speeds that can reach over 300 kilometers per hour. But when these signals reach their destination, they don't crash or spark. They merge quietly into harmony, like instruments tuning together before the music begins. If we follow the thread a little further, we find another paradox. Your brain is you, yet it is also a stranger. It creates the feeling of self-awareness, but you never directly experience its workings. You can't feel your neurons firing. You don't hear the messages that travel between cells. What you sense instead is the finished result, the texture of thought, the flow of consciousness. The machinery that creates it all remains hidden, a silent artisan behind a curtain. It's a little like watching a movie without knowing how the projector works. You see the story, feel the emotion, but the mechanism remains invisible. For centuries, scientists and philosophers have tried to uncover that mechanism. Some early thinkers believed the brain was filled with air. Pneuma, they called it. A divine breath carrying thoughts from one place to another. Others imagined it as a labyrinth of tiny tubes and fluids, an organ of balance rather than intelligence. Even as microscopes revealed cells and fibres, the mystery only deepened. How could such biological threads give rise to poetry, to mathematics, to love? It seemed impossible that flesh could dream. But over time, we learned that simplicity hides beneath the surface of complexity. The brain is built from repetition, billions of similar cells performing the same basic dance, combining in endless patterns. Each neuron receives signals, sums them up, and if the total passes a certain threshold, it fires, sending a pulse along its slender fibre to the next cell. The details of chemistry, the movement of sodium and potassium ions, the release of neurotransmitters, can sound abstract, but the essence is simple. It's communication. It's one cell leaning toward another and saying, "I felt something, pass it on." And the next cell listens and responds. In that endless relay, consciousness emerges, not from a single spark, but from the harmony of countless small ones. You might think of it as a living network, a forest where lightning flows through roots rather than clouds. Each neuron is both independent and connected. It listens to hundreds, sometimes thousands of neighbours, adjusting its signals as the situation changes. When you learn something new, these connections subtly shift. Pathways strengthen or fade. The forest reorganises itself. That is why the brain is so hard to map. It is never still. Even as you listen now, your brain is rewriting its own pathways to remember the sound of this voice, the calm you feel, the images you're forming. If we could shrink small enough to wander inside this forest, it wouldn't look like the tidy diagrams in textbooks. It would glow softly, a golden web in motion, waves of light rippling through tangled branches. Chemical messengers would drift between cells like glowing dust in a sunbeam. The rhythm of it would be hypnotic, almost musical. And though we might be tempted to call it electric, that would only describe half of it. Each spark of electricity calls forth a bloom of chemistry. Each chemical change triggers new electrical waves. It's a conversation between energy and matter, repeated billions of times each second, until the entire network becomes a single shimmering field of thought. To truly grasp the scale of this miracle, consider this. If you tried to count all the synapses in your brain, the connection points between neurons, and you counted one every second, it would take you over 3 million years to finish. And yet somehow, all of that activity happens effortlessly, seamlessly, in less than the blink of an eye. The human brain doesn't need to think about thinking, it just does. The more we learn about this hidden universe, the more it humbles us. The brain is not a computer in any ordinary sense. It's not made of switches or wires, but of living tissue that grows, heals, and changes. It doesn't store data. It weaves stories. It doesn't calculate in ones and zeros. It balances emotions, images, sensations, and predictions all at once. If computers are built on logic, the brain is built on rhythm. Cycles, feedback loops, bursts of silence followed by waves of activity. Each breath, each heartbeat subtly synchronizes with it, creating a whole body symphony of living physics. And so, as we rest here tonight, thinking quietly about thinking itself, we're reminded that the miracle isn't only in what the brain can do, it's in how it does it, quietly, efficiently, gracefully. Every time you close your eyes and imagine, every time you remember, decide, or love, those same delicate signals ripple through that soft universe, connecting stars of thought across the space inside you. The cosmos above and the cosmos within mirror each other, both vast, both filled with light, both endlessly mysterious. And perhaps, in some poetic way, the brain doesn't just observe the universe, it recreates it, a miniature cosmos folded into the warmth of your own being. If we stay for a moment within this soft universe, we can begin to sense how it speaks, not in words or images, but in pulses of energy that move through living matter. The brain's true language isn't made of letters or sounds. It's a dance of tiny waves, each one carrying a hint of feeling or meaning, rippling through an ocean of cells that never truly rest. From the outside, the skull seems perfectly still, but beneath it, billions of small electric sighs rise and fade like the murmur of distant wind through leaves. Every neuron, every tiny cell has its own rhythm. When it sends a message, it's not shouting, it's releasing a pulse, a brief change in the flow of energy along its delicate fibre. That pulse travels until it reaches a gap, a microscopic space between cells. There it pauses and sends a chemical messenger to bridge the distance. Those messengers are molecules small enough to fit 1,000 times across the width of a human hair, but together they carry every signal that becomes thought, movement, or emotion. You might imagine them like lanterns floating across a night river, one cell lighting the next and the next until the whole surface glows. The molecules have different personalities. Some, like dopamine, bring sparks of curiosity and reward, turning the ordinary into joy. Others, like serotonin, calm the waves, smoothing restless thought into peace. Glutamate acts as the voice that pushes things forward. Go, move, learn. Gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA, is the quiet friend that gently says, enough for now. They don't fight, they collaborate, balancing the tone of the mind like instruments tuning one another in an endless rehearsal. In this slow concert, timing is everything. Each pulse lasts only a few thousandths of a second, but the pattern of their arrival and the harmony of their rhythm is what creates meaning. A burst of quick pulses might mean excitement, a slower wave, calm reflection. When groups of neurons fire together in rhythm, something larger emerges, a pattern, a thought, an intention. Scientists sometimes record these patterns as brain waves, gentle electrical rhythms that sweep through different regions, each with its own tempo. The fast waves of wakefulness, the slow rolling waves of deep sleep, all are the brain's way of marking time. To you, these signals are invisible. You never sense the small flashes that make your arm move or your memory return, but your brain feels them all the same, weaving their motion into something seamless. It's as if you were watching a ballet in perfect harmony without ever hearing the music. The beauty of the performance lies in its invisibility. If we follow one of these pulses from its beginning, we find that it starts with a tiny change in balance. The outer wall of a neuron separates two kinds of charged particles. Imagine them as tiny guests waiting at different sides of a door. On one side are ions of sodium carrying a faint positive charge. On the other side are ions of potassium, a bit larger, carrying their own soft glow of energy. In its resting state, the neuron keeps these guests apart, like two crowds waiting quietly before a festival. But when a signal arrives, tiny gates open along the cell surface. The sodium ions rush in, the potassium flows out, and for a moment, the balance flips. That quick exchange, only a few milliseconds long, is what scientists call an action potential. But we don't need the term. We can think of it more simply. It's the heartbeat of a thought, a tiny inhale and exhale of energy, repeated billions of times every second across your brain. When the pulse ends, the neuron restores its balance, resetting itself for the next breath of communication. This is how your body moves, how you speak, how you dream. Every word you've ever said began as a wave of sodium entering a cell, followed by potassium drifting out, each like the tide rising and falling along the shore. And then there are the messengers themselves, the neurotransmitters. They don't stay still. After one neuron releases them, the next cell catches what it needs and quietly returns the rest. Enzymes, the caretakers of the system, sweep through the synapse, cleaning away the leftover molecules, keeping the space ready for the next whisper. The balance must remain perfect. Too much of one chemical, and the music becomes too loud. Too little, and it fades into silence. The miracle is that, in most moments, your brain gets it exactly right, adjusting millions of these exchanges in real time, without effort, without awareness. When groups of neurons begin to coordinate, new possibilities appear. Imagine a crowd of people standing in a dark field, each holding a candle. One by one, the flames begin to flicker in rhythm, some fast, some slow. After a while, patterns emerge. The glow begins to pulse, forming waves that travel across the field. This is what happens inside your head when you think, remember, or imagine. It's a choreography of light and rhythm, organised not by a single conductor, but by countless tiny decisions made in unison. The most beautiful part is how flexible it all is. These connections change constantly. They strengthen when used, weaken when neglected. When you learn something new, certain pathways become easier to follow, as if the forest of thought had new trails carved through it. The more often you travel those trails, the smoother they become. That's how habits form, skills refine, and memories take root. It's also how recovery happens when the brain is injured. New paths growing quietly around old damage, new routes finding their way home. Even when you rest, this whisper network doesn't stop. During sleep, it replays the day's signals, strengthening the paths that matter and letting the others fade. In a sense, your brain spends every night tending its garden, pruning, replanting, and weaving order from the noise. That's why sleep feels so cleansing, not just for the body, but for the mind. The brain uses the darkness to polish its memories and clear the clutter of thought. So while the brain's messages may be small, their harmony is enormous. Within each quiet pulse lies the potential for every human experience. Music, language, invention, tenderness. The electricity that guides your hand to write a note, or your eyes to follow a falling leaf, is the same that fuels your dreams and hopes. The difference is only in how the signals align. And when you step back and think about it, gently without hurry, you realize that this whisper network doesn't simply carry information, it carries you. Every flicker of curiosity, every moment of warmth, every spark of understanding has passed through this invisible forest of connections. The thought that you're having right now, about the thought you're having, is itself one more ripple on the surface of that quiet sea. As we drift further into this story, the signals begin to take shape, organising themselves into something larger, a structure, a geography of mind. It's here that the brain stops being only a storm of tiny lights and begins to reveal its architecture, the gentle curves and hidden chambers where perception becomes understanding, and understanding becomes the story of who you are. If we follow the quiet trail of these electric ripples, we find ourselves entering the landscape of the brain itself, not just its chemistry, but its geography. The surface folds and curves like a coastline seen from the air, ridges and valleys layered upon one another, each contour holding its own small civilization of meaning. This folded terrain, called the cortex, allows vast amounts of living surface to fit within the small space of your skull, an origami of consciousness. each crease a story waiting to unfold. The brain has many regions, but you can think of it as a house with several rooms, each one softly lit, connected by hallways through which the whispers of thought drift and mingle. None of these rooms works alone. They trade signals and borrow ideas, passing messages like notes slid under shared doors. At the front of the house is the frontal lobe, the room of planning, imagination, and decision. It's where ideas become, intentions and impulses meet reflection. You might picture it as a quiet study at the front of your mind, full of maps and sketches, a place where you weigh what could be against what should be. Every time you pause before speaking, consider a choice, or picture tomorrow's possibilities. It's this room that lights up, rearranging the furniture of your thoughts. Behind it lies the parietal lobe, a kind of navigation room. Here, the brain gathers information about space, touch, and movement. The gentle awareness of where your hands are when you type, how far away your cup of tea rests, or how your body fits within the world. It translates texture, pressure, and direction into a seamless sense of presence. It's because of this room that you can close your eyes and still know where your limbs are, as if the house of your body had windows that could see without light. To the side sits the temporal lobe, the library of sound and memory. When you hear a melody, recognize a voice, or recall a sentence you read yesterday, this is the room you're visiting. It's lined with countless shelves filled with experiences, all catalogued quietly, waiting to be remembered. Deep inside this region hides the hippocampus, the keeper of memory. Its name means seahorse, and in its curved shape, it really does resemble one. A delicate creature swimming through the sea of your mind, transforming moments into memories. The hippocampus records the story of your life, not as perfect detail but as essence. The scent of a morning, the colour of a friend's laughter, the pattern of sunlight through a window. Each recollection is a ripple returning from the depths. Further back, tucked against the rear wall of this inner house, is the occipital lobe, the cinema of vision. Here, everything you see is reassembled, pixel by pixel, from signals that began as light striking your eyes. The world you think you're observing out there is actually being created in here, within this darkened theatre. The occipital lobe paints the outlines, fills the colours, and corrects for every flicker of light, presenting to you a smooth, continuous movie of reality. Yet even that movie is an illusion, a best guess the brain makes about what's beyond the window. Beneath these upper rooms sits an older level of the house, one built long before humans learned language. Here lies the limbic system, a circular hall connecting emotion, memory and motivation. It's the home of the amygdala, a small almond-shaped region that reacts before you can think, the alarm that makes your heart race when you startle or when danger whispers. It's also the realm of feeling, colouring every experience with subtle hues of joy, curiosity, fear, or tenderness. The hypothalamus lives nearby, quietly keeping the body in balance. Hunger, temperature, hormones, the slow ebb and flow of life's tides. Together they form the emotional weather of your inner world, blending reason and instinct into the complex climate of being human. And then, almost hidden below, we reach the brain stem, the foundation. It's the oldest and most steadfast part of the house, the one that keeps everything running even when the upper floors sleep. It manages breathing, heartbeat, and the reflexes that keep you alive. You might think of it as the caretaker who never rests, tending the fires in the hearth, making sure the lights never go out. Nearby lies the cerebellum, a small structure shaped like a curled leaf. For a long time, scientists thought it was simply a centre of balance and movement, but we now know it also plays a role in rhythm, timing, and even thought. When you walk gracefully, play an instrument, or simply breathe in sync with your surroundings, the cerebellum is quietly at work, fine-tuning every gesture so it feels smooth and effortless. It's the body's metronome, the keeper of steady rhythm amid the chaos of motion. Every room in this living house is wired to every other. Thin highways of white matter like shimmering corridors carry information between them. You might picture it as light travelling through a web of hallways, illuminating different rooms as needed. When you speak, visual centres light up to recall shapes of letters. When you imagine, memory chambers open their doors. When you plan, emotional corridors hum softly, offering guidance from feeling as well as thought. There is no single command centre. The house operates as a family, each member passing along what it knows in a circle of quiet cooperation. If you've ever walked through your own home at night, the floor creaking softly, light spilling under doorways, you already know what it's like to move through this inner house. The brain is a place of warmth and familiarity. You never see its rooms directly, but you live in them constantly. Every sense, every idea, every moment of reflection is another step across its floors. What's most remarkable is that no two houses are built quite the same. The layout of your brain has been shaped by every experience you've ever had. The songs you've loved, the languages you've heard, the skills you've practiced, all have left small architectural traces. In this sense, your brain is not a factory, but a home under continuous renovation, always expanding its rooms, repainting its walls, adding new staircases where once there were none. And when we pause to listen to this place, to feel the hum beneath the quiet, we sense how alive it is. This is the architecture of thought, not marble and steel, but living tissue, adapting moment by moment. Within its walls, emotion and logic share the same hallway. Imagination leans on memory's doorframe, and reason glances out the window toward curiosity. As we drift further into this inner landscape, we begin to notice that these rooms don't just hold ideas, they connect into networks, rivers of activity flowing between them. The brain is less a house and more a city, one that never sleeps, where every street carries both traffic and possibility. To understand that city, we'll have to follow its bridges, tracing how thoughts travel, merge and transform. The path now carries us toward those networks of connection, where the architecture of the mind becomes a living map of its own motion. If we linger in this house of thought for a while, we begin to sense something even deeper than its architecture. Beneath the rooms and corridors, there's movement, soft currents of communication that never truly stop. The brain is not a place of stillness. It's a garden crossed by countless streams. Signals flow through its pathways like water threading through roots, feeding ideas, emotions, and memories. What we call thinking is not one voice speaking, but the rustle of an entire ecosystem alive with exchange. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest just after rain. Tiny rivulets gather into larger streams, some slow and reflective, others quick and sparkling. Each drop may seem small, but together they carve the shape of the land. The same is true inside your head. Each small signal, a whisper between two neurons, joins others to form great rivers of coordinated activity. These flowing patterns are what scientists call networks, large ensembles of regions working together for a shared purpose. They aren't fixed like wires, they're flexible, fluid, forming and fading as needed, changing from moment to moment depending on what your mind is doing. Some of these rivers are active when you focus, reading or solving a problem. Others awaken when your mind drifts, when you're daydreaming or remembering. Together they create a rhythm, a tide of attention that shifts between effort and ease, between doing and simply being. It's an elegant dance, and though we can give it scientific names, it might be easier to picture it as the movement of light through stained glass, colours shifting, merging, casting patterns that are never quite the same twice. One of the most important of these rivers flows when you rest, when you aren't aiming at any particular task. Scientists call it the default mode network. But it's less a machine and more a quiet sea. It's active when you reflect, imagine, or wander through your own memories. You might feel it when you stare out a window and suddenly remember something long forgotten, or when a new idea drifts in uninvited. It connects distant parts of the brain, the memory chambers, the emotional halls, the reflective study, allowing them to talk without the pressure of a deadline. In this gentle space, creativity often blooms. Thoughts meet by chance, ideas mingle, and the mind explores its own back garden. Balancing this quiet sea is another network, one that lights up when you turn your focus outward. This is sometimes called the executive control network. It keeps you steady on task, helps you follow directions, and turns daydreams into plans. If the default mode is the painter, the executive network is the architect. Practical, deliberate, shaping imagination into something that can stand. Between them lies a third current, the salience network, acting as a gatekeeper. It decides what matters most in any given moment. The sound of a nearby voice, the feeling of thirst, a memory worth recalling. It's the part of you that notices the sudden cry of a child in the distance or the first drop of rain on your skin. These three great rivers, imagination, control, and awareness, flow in and out of one another, keeping the brain in balance. When one grows too strong, the others soften to make room. It's a natural harmony, a quiet self-regulation that doesn't require thought. It simply happens, like breathing. And just as streams depend on their environment, these networks are shaped by your experiences. Meditation, for instance, can smooth their flow, helping the attention networks and the reflective networks move in rhythm rather than conflict. Long-term stress can do the opposite, causing the rivers to rush or stagnate, leaving you tired or scattered. The brain's beauty lies in how it responds, always capable of reshaping its pathways, always learning how to find calm again. You can see evidence of these flows in something called brain waves, gentle electrical rhythms that roll through the cortex like distant tides. When you're relaxed, they slow, rising and falling like waves on a quiet shore. When you're alert, they quicken, smaller ripples overlapping one another. Though scientists give them names like alpha, beta, or delta, you can think of them more simply as the brain's breathing patterns, invisible exhalations of thought. They carry not formulas, but feeling. Calm when slow, intensity when fast, and sometimes, during creativity or meditation, a layered mix of both. These waves can synchronize across regions, allowing faraway parts of the brain to act together, as if distant rooms suddenly found the same rhythm. When you learn something new, when you suddenly understand a problem that puzzled you for days, it's often because separate networks have fallen into harmony for a moment. The insight you feel, that spark of, "oh, I get it," is the sound of rivers meeting. In this inner garden, not all flows are equal. Some are deep and steady, carrying emotion and long memory. Others are fleeting, rippling across the surface of awareness. But every one of them is vital. The strength of the system lies not in any single path, but in the pattern they form together. It's like the roots of a tree, millions of fine threads exchanging nutrients in silence. You don't see them, yet they feed everything above. The mind, in this sense, is not a hierarchy, but an ecology, a living balance of many forms of life coexisting, each shaping the others. When you learn to rest your attention, to let your thoughts move without forcing them, you begin to feel these currents. The mind doesn't stop, it simply flows differently. Some thoughts pass like clouds, light and changing. Others linger, forming pools of reflection. Still others sink beneath the surface, nourishing imagination where you can't yet see it. In meditation, this shifting of mental water becomes easier to sense. You realize that thinking and feeling are not separate. They're two textures of the same stream. And if we look gently toward the horizon of this inner landscape, we see how these rivers connect not just within us, but between us. When you talk with another person and truly listen, your rhythms begin to align, brainwaves subtly synchronizing, breath matching breath. The boundaries of your inner garden open, allowing another's current to flow beside your own. The science calls this interpersonal synchrony, but you can simply think of it as resonance. The feeling of being understood, of sharing a common flow. As we drift further into this journey, the paths of this garden lead us to another wonder: how the mind, through these networks of connection, never stops changing. Each moment of learning or emotion reshapes its streams ever so slightly. The brain, it turns out, is not a landscape carved once and for all. It's a river delta, always shifting, always making new land from the quiet sediment of experience. The story of how this garden renews itself and how new pathways grow where old ones fade is the story of memory, learning, and transformation. That is where our next gentle step carries us. If we follow the soft current of these networks a little longer, we discover something surprising. The brain is never silent. Even in the deepest stillness, when your body seems at rest and your thoughts have drifted towards sleep, the brain is quietly awake, tending to its own internal garden. It is a tireless caretaker, sweeping, sorting, repairing, whispering to itself through the long hours of the night. To call it resting would be like calling the ocean still just because its waves are slow. Beneath the calm surface, it's always moving. For a long time, scientists believed that when you stopped focusing on the world, your brain simply powered down, like a lamp switched off. But then they began to notice something strange. When people rested in scanners that measured brain activity, vast regions lit up, not the ones used for physical action, but those devoted to reflection, memory, imagination, and emotion. The mind, it seemed, had its own kind of night shift. It worked behind the scenes, processing the day, repairing the delicate web of connections that make up your sense of self. During the day, your neurons are busy with the traffic of experience, sensations pouring in, decisions being made, emotions rising and falling. By night, the same cells quietly replay these patterns, strengthening the ones that matter most and letting the others fade. It's like a librarian working after hours, deciding which books deserve a permanent shelf and which were just passing thoughts. This is how memory consolidates, not through effort, but through rhythm. The day's chaos is reorganized into meaning while you dream. At the same time, the brain is performing something even more essential, cleaning itself. Inside its folds, waste molecules accumulate as cells burn energy. During sleep, special channels between the brain cells widen, allowing cerebrospinal fluid, a clear liquid that cushions the brain, to wash through its tissues, carrying away what's no longer needed. This cleansing system, called the glymphatic flow, is like a tide that comes in only at night. As you drift through dreams, it removes the chemical traces of your waking hours, preparing you for another day of thought. When you wake refreshed, it's not only your body that has rested. Your mind has been quietly rinsed in a slow, luminous tide. But even while it cleans and reorders, the brain keeps up its conversation. It hums with faint oscillations, the coordinated rise and fall of electrical rhythms. Some are fast and light, like ripples across a pond when the wind passes. Others are slow and deep, like waves rolling toward shore. Together, they create the mind's background music, the pulse that holds its many parts in time. When you listen to a song you love, when you fall into rhythm with a friend's voice, those waves shift and realign. It's as though your entire being is listening and responding, beat by beat. There's another kind of quiet dialogue that happens too, not between different parts of the brain, but between the brain and the body. Your heart sends its own rhythmic messages upward, affecting mood and focus. Your breath does the same. Every inhalation subtly speeds your heartbeat. Every exhalation slows it down. This rhythm, called the respiratory cycle, acts like a metronome for emotion. When you breathe calmly, it sends a message of safety that spreads through the nervous system, telling the brain it's all right. You can rest now. The body in turn releases hormones and messengers that influence thought. It's a two-way conversation, spoken not in words but in rhythm. The mind listens to the body's pulse, and the body listens back. Even small movements, like stretching your fingers or turning your head, send feedback that helps the brain map its position in space. Tiny sensors in your muscles and joints constantly report how tense or relaxed you are, updating the brain's inner picture of your body. That's why tension in your shoulders can cloud your thoughts, and why a few deep breaths can suddenly make a problem seem easier. The connection between body and mind isn't poetic, it's literal. Every sigh, every flutter of heartbeat, every shift of posture is a signal in that ongoing dialogue. You can witness this constant conversation in moments of stillness. Imagine sitting by a window on a rainy afternoon, not doing anything in particular. You might think you're idle, but your brain is alive with motion. Memories surface, fade, return. Random thoughts drift by like leaves in the rain. Beneath them, deeper processes unfold. Old experiences being integrated, emotional knots slowly loosening. What feels like rest is actually transformation. This is why ideas often appear when you stop searching for them. The brain works best when you let it wander. Its creativity thrives in silence, the way seeds germinate best in darkness. Inside each cell, countless molecular machines carry on their work. They ferry nutrients, repair membranes, reset electrical balances. You could imagine them as caretakers moving through the hallways of a great building at night, dusting shelves and checking that every door still opens. Most of this maintenance is invisible, yet it's vital. If one small part of the system falters, others quickly adjust, rerouting signals to keep the conversation going. This adaptability, this willingness of the brain to change its routes, is what keeps it alive, resilient, and endlessly curious. And then there are the glial cells, the often overlooked companions of neurons. They don't transmit impulses, but they nurture and protect the ones that do. Some insulate the pathways, wrapping them in layers that help signals travel swiftly and cleanly. Others deliver nutrients or remove waste. A special kind, the astrocytes, extend their star-shaped arms through the neural forest, guiding newborn connections and soothing inflamed ones. They are the gardeners of the brain, ensuring that its electrical symphony never falls into disarray. They don't receive much attention in popular science, but without them, thought itself would crumble. So when you lie still at night thinking the mind has finally gone quiet, remember this: silence is never empty. It's filled with tiny acts of repair and renewal. Your brain is reviewing, sorting, and strengthening itself, like a city whose lights dim but never truly go out. The maintenance crews come out, the street sweepers hum, the river of cerebrospinal fluid glides through dark alleys. Morning will arrive to find everything in place again, ready for the bustle of another day. If you listen closely, not with your ears but with your imagination, you can almost hear it, the faint hum of electricity, the sigh of cellular tides, the quiet conversation between neurons and their patient companions. It is the soft sound of life continuing, even when everything else feels still. The brain doesn't need to rest to dream. Dreaming is its way of resting. It's a gentle paradox, an organ that works hardest when we think we're doing nothing at all. And as we drift further into this story, these quiet nocturnal rhythms will carry us into the next part of our journey, where this constant conversation becomes memory, and memory becomes learning. Because in the end, every new thought, every fresh idea, begins as one more message whispered through the dark corridors of this sleepless city within you. If we let our thoughts drift back over everything the brain does, its currents of communication, It's networks of rivers and rooms. A simple truth begins to surface. Nothing in it is fixed. Every connection, every pathway of memory and movement is open to change. The brain is not a stone temple. It's a living landscape. Its roads shift after every storm. Its gardens rearrange after every season. This flexibility, known as neuroplasticity, is what allows us to learn, to heal, and to become someone new. But we don't need the term to feel its presence. We see it every time a child learns to speak, or when a person relearns how to walk after injury. It's the brain's most astonishing gift, the quiet ability to rewrite itself. Picture a path through a forest. At first, the way is tangled and uneven. Each step crushes a few leaves, bends a few stems, leaves a faint trace. If you walk it again tomorrow, the trail becomes easier. After a week, it's smooth. After a year, it feels like it's always been there. Thoughts work in the same way. Every time you practice a skill, recall a memory, or feel an emotion, certain neurons fire together, passing messages along familiar routes. Over time, those routes become faster, more efficient. The brain, in essence, learns the shortcut. This is what people mean when they say neurons that fire together wire together. It's not poetry, it's biology quietly reinforcing the well-worn trails of the mind. Inside your skull, this process unfolds in silence. When two neurons communicate repeatedly, their connection strengthens. The tiny space between them, the synapse, grows more responsive. Signals arrive more easily, as if the bridge between them were widening. Scientists have observed this strengthening and call it long-term potentiation, but we can imagine it as two friends who, after talking often, begin to finish each other's sentences. Their understanding becomes so natural that a single glance can convey 1,000 words. This is how the brain remembers, how it builds the foundation of learning. The opposite can happen too. Connections that go unused slowly weaken, not as punishment, but as conservation. The brain prunes the garden of thought to make space for new growth. When you forget a skill or lose a habit, it's not loss, it's recycling. The soil of the mind is never wasted. Those freed up pathways can become something else, ready for new memories and experiences. Even in aging, this process never truly stops. It only slows. The gardener still works, trimming here, planting there, rearranging the pattern of who you are. This adaptability is not limited to learning facts or movement. It includes emotion, empathy, even identity. Imagine someone who has lived for years under stress, where the mind must constantly watch for danger. The pathways of fear, the ones that connect the amygdala, the emotional alarm, to the frontal cortex, become well-travelled roads. But with time and safety, new routes appear. The pathways of calm and reflection start to grow, winding gently around the old fear circuits until they no longer dominate the landscape. Healing in this way is not forgetting. It's rerouting the roads of reaction. This is why therapy, practice, or even simple kindness can have such profound effects. The brain changes its wiring to match what it experiences most often. When it meets compassion, it learns compassion. When it meets calm, it learns peace. When it faces challenge but survives, it learns resilience. In the end, every act of patience or forgiveness, every deep breath taken instead of anger, leaves a small trace in the neural soil. The next time, the path is easier to find. Neuroplasticity is also what allows recovery after injury. When one region of the brain is damaged, others can sometimes take over its duties. It's as if a city loses one bridge and immediately begins to build another nearby. With training, signals find new routes, messages find new homes. Rehabilitation therapy, music, and movement are all ways of teaching the brain to reroute its messages. Slowly, persistently, like water finding a new stream bed. Each success strengthens confidence, and confidence itself further encourages rewiring. The process feeds itself, gentle but unstoppable. Even simple repetition shapes the brain. When you play a piece of music, practice a dance, or repeat a new word, the patterns of motion and sound become etched into your neurons. This repetition doesn't just refine skill, it alters structure. Brain imaging shows that musicians, for instance, have larger or more active areas devoted to hearing and movement. Language learners develop new connections between auditory and memory centers. These aren't metaphors, they're physical changes sculpted by experience. The same is true for meditation, reading, or even walking through new environments. Every challenge stretches the map a little further, and yet the process is delicate. It depends on rest, nutrition, and curiosity, the simple ingredients of a well-tended life. The brain learns best when it feels safe, supported, and interested. Fear can focus learning for a short while, but it narrows attention. Curiosity opens it. When you learn through wonder rather than pressure, your brain's chemistry changes. The molecules of motivation, dopamine and others, act like sunlight on a plant, encouraging growth. That's why genuine fascination feels rewarding. The pleasure of discovery isn't decoration, it's the biological fuel that drives learning. There's comfort in knowing this. It means that change, even slow or painful change, is never wasted. The brain remembers every attempt, every near success. Each effort leaves traces that make the next one easier. Just as muscles strengthen with use, thoughts and behaviors become easier with repetition. The difference is that neurons don't grow larger like muscles. They grow closer, faster, more coordinated. Each success is a rehearsal for the next. Each mistake a redirection rather than a failure. Even the act of listening to these words is reshaping you. Somewhere within the folds of your temporal lobe, neurons are firing in patterns that didn't exist before, forming gentle threads that connect curiosity with calm. By the time this story ends, those patterns will have changed again, absorbed into the quiet rhythm of your mind. That's the miracle of plasticity. You can't hear it happening, but it's happening all the same. And if you ever feel trapped by old habits or defined by old fears, this truth is worth remembering. Nothing in your brain is permanent. The paths that shape your thoughts can always be rewritten. Growth never stops, it only changes pace. The same way forests recover after fire, the mind regrows itself, using its ashes as soil. Every new experience, every gentle insight, is one more green shoot emerging from the ground of yesterday. As we drift further into this story, the pattern of memory begins to unfold. For what is memory, if not the living record of all these rewrites? It is the garden's journal, the soft echo of change preserved in time. To understand memory is to see how the brain transforms fleeting experience into the enduring story of a life, and that is where the next path leads us. If we listen closely to the rhythm of the brain, we begin to sense that it isn't just a place of motion, it's also a keeper of stories. Every moment you've ever lived, the scent of early rain, the sound of your name spoken kindly, the warmth of sunlight through a curtain has left a trace. Some traces fade quickly, like footprints in sand, while others settle deep into the soil of memory, waiting to be found again. This delicate architecture of remembering is one of the brain's most poetic designs, a living library that never truly closes. It begins with sensation, a flicker of light, a vibration of air, a taste, a touch. These signals arrive at their first destination, the sensory cortices, the small regions along the brain's outer surface that specialize in decoding the world. They read the language of reality, the brightness of a color, the pitch of a sound, and translate it into the electrical whispers that the brain understands. From there, the signals travel inward, converging in a region deep within the temporal lobe called the hippocampus. The hippocampus, shaped like a curled seahorse, is the brain's gentle librarian. Its job is to collect the day's experiences and decide what to keep. You might imagine it walking through the corridors of your mind each evening, gathering the scattered notes of the day, a smile, conversation, a new idea, and placing them carefully onto waiting shelves. It doesn't record every detail. That would be too heavy to carry. Instead, it saves the essence, the emotional weight, the meaning. As the day fades and sleep begins, this librarian works overtime. While you dream, the hippocampus quietly replays the neural patterns from your waking hours, looping them again and again. These loops send signals to other regions, the cortex, the amygdala, strengthening the connections that represent what you've learned. Scientists call this memory consolidation, but you can think of it as the mind humming to itself in the dark, softly repeating the songs it wants to remember. The rhythm of this nightly rehearsal helps memories migrate from the temporary shelves of the hippocampus into the vast, long-term archives of the cortex, where they can live for years, sometimes for a lifetime. If we follow one of these memories as it travels, we might see it glowing faintly as it moves, a constellation being redrawn. The visual parts of the brain recall shape and colour. The auditory centres hum with remembered sound. The amygdala, the seat of emotion, adds tone and urgency, deciding which memories deserve bold ink and which should fade to watercolour. That's why you can forget what you had for lunch last week but vividly recall a moment of joy or fear from years ago. Emotion tells the brain, this matters, remember it. It is the colour in memory's paint. But memory is not a perfect recording. It's a creative act, a reconstruction each time you recall. When you summon a memory, your brain doesn't simply play it back. It rebuilds it, pulling pieces from many regions, stitching them together in the present moment. It's less like watching a film and more like painting from memory. Each recall adds new brushstrokes, blending yesterday's truth with today's perspective. That's why recollections can shift slightly over time. They're alive, adapting to who you are now. Forgetfulness, too, plays its part in this architecture. It's not failure, but design. The brain cannot hold every detail, so it prunes what's unneeded, leaving space for what still grows. Like a librarian who removes duplicate volumes to make room for new stories, your mind discards clutter, keeping the narrative clear. This gentle forgetting is one of the brain's greatest kindnesses. It spares us the noise of unnecessary detail, letting the moments that truly shape us stand out in relief. Sometimes, though, the library feels full. You search for a name and find only dust. The memory was stored, but the path has grown faint. When you sleep, rest, or revisit a familiar smell or sound, the hippocampus often reopens that corridor, restoring the connection. This is why certain scents, cinnamon, sea air, wood smoke, can instantly transport you to another time. The senses are bookmarks, helping the librarian find the right page. Dreams, too, belong to this process. They are the mind's quiet rehearsal, fragments of memory and imagination woven together. During certain phases of sleep, the hippocampus and cortex exchange bursts of communication, as if confirming their notes. Do you still have this one? Shall we keep it? These exchanges are brief, almost imperceptible, but over the course of a night they trace the shape of your day into permanence. When you awaken and recall a dream, you are glimpsing the brain mid-conversation with itself. It's a soothing thought that while you lie still, your brain is busy building the story of you. Each morning you wake slightly changed, the architecture of your inner library reshaped by the gentle hands of sleep. Old pathways are polished, new ones are drawn. Memory isn't a storehouse of what has been, but a living reflection of what you continue to become. If you could walk through that library, you wouldn't find neat rows of books. You'd find constellations, patterns of light linking moments across time. The first notes of a song you once loved glowing near the memory of a certain evening, the rhythm of your own heartbeat echoing beside the memory of your mother's voice. These connections don't just record, they create meaning. They remind you that your life is not a list of events, but a web of relationships, each memory shaped by how it felt to be there. Sometimes, when people lose parts of their memory, the structure doesn't collapse. The scaffolding remains, waiting for new stories. The brain is remarkably resilient. It can build new connections to replace the old, or strengthen the faint ones that remain. That's why revisiting familiar places or hearing old songs can awaken something that seemed lost. Memory, at its heart, is an act of renewal. So the next time you fall asleep, imagine that quiet librarian wandering through your mind's corridors, gathering the moments of your day and humming softly to keep from waking you. Each thought, each laugh, each small observation becomes another page in the ever-growing book of you. And as dawn returns, the library opens its doors again, ready for another day of collecting, shaping, and gently rewriting the story. As we drift onward, this library of the mind begins to reveal its fragility, how sometimes the shelves loosen, the pages fade, and yet even then, new connections find their way. The next chapter of our journey leads us there, to the tender resilience of remembering and forgetting. If you've ever walked into a room and forgotten why, or searched for a word that felt just out of reach, you've touched the gentle edge of memory's fragility. It's a common moment, standing still, feeling the thought hover just beyond the fingertips of your mind. The human brain, with all its brilliance, has always been balanced on that fine line between remembering and letting go. Yet even in forgetting, there is grace. The act of losing a memory is not failure. It is part of the rhythm that allows the mind to make room for what's new. Memory isn't a single thing you can point to. It's a collection of many processes working together in intricate harmony. Some memories are fleeting, like ripples on a pond, the taste of a drink, the colour of a passing car. Others last for years or decades. They live across different regions of the brain, each holding a piece of the puzzle. The hippocampus stores patterns and context. The amygdala attaches emotion. The cortex layers detail over time. To recall even one moment, these regions must speak to one another perfectly, linking fragments into a story. When that connection weakens, a memory doesn't vanish. It simply falls quiet, waiting for the right cue to awaken again. Sometimes the loss is temporary, like a fog that clears when the light changes. Sleep, rest, or even a simple scent can bring the forgotten back. Other times the change is deeper. In certain conditions, a concussion, a stroke, or diseases like Alzheimer's, parts of the brain that manage memory can be disrupted. These conditions sound frightening, and they are deeply human, but even here, the story isn't only about decline. The brain is an artist of adaptation. When one path is blocked, it begins searching for another, building quiet detours through the forest of neurons. In Alzheimer's, for instance, certain cells begin to lose their structure, tangled by proteins that no longer fold correctly. Communication between neurons slows, yet other regions of the brain often step in, forming new connections to support what remains. It's as if the city of thought reroutes its traffic when a bridge closes. Nearby streets light up, learning to carry the load. This process doesn't always restore everything, but it keeps the essence, the emotional signature of the person, the familiarity of love, the rhythm of laughter. The details may fade, but the presence endures. Amnesia too teaches us about the resilience of the mind. People who lose parts of their memory after an accident sometimes find that old habits, riding a bicycle, playing an instrument, remain intact. These memories live in different networks, in circuits that handle skill and movement rather than words or images. The brain, it seems, keeps multiple archives, not all stored in the same room. Some are buried deeper, protected by the very simplicity of repetition. When we practice something until it becomes second nature, we store it beyond the reach of most forgetting. That is why you can still hum a childhood song, even if you've long forgotten the words. There's something profoundly comforting in that, Memory doesn't exist only to preserve knowledge, it preserves continuity. Even when details slip away, the emotional truth of an experience, the warmth of affection, the texture of a familiar voice, remains. The brain holds on to what matters most, the feelings that give life its meaning. In a way, forgetting details is how it protects the heart of a memory from being buried in noise. You can see this in everyday life. Think of a grandparent telling the same story again and again. The facts may shift slightly each time, the dates blur, the setting change. But the emotion, pride, love, nostalgia never fades. The story's truth is not in its precision, but in its feeling. This is how memory keeps us human. It values emotion over exactness, significance over accuracy. That's also why a photograph may remind you of the moment it captured, yet it can never fully be that moment. The living warmth of memory lies beyond any image or word. And just as memories can fade, they can return. A tune on the radio, the scent of soap, a line of sunlight across a table, any of these can reopen doors you thought were lost. These sensory keys work because they reactivate the neural pathways that were built when the memory first formed. When that spark travels again, old networks light up, sometimes after years of quiet. The hippocampus and the cortex renew their conversation, and for an instant you are both then and now, remembering not just the event, but the feeling of being that earlier self. The science of this reconnection is still unfolding. Researchers are finding that new cells are born in the hippocampus even in adulthood, a gentle process called neurogenesis. These young neurons act like seedlings in an old forest, ready to take root where there's room. They may help rebuild fragile networks, strengthening memory and learning over time. You don't have to picture molecules or equations to understand it. Simply imagine a garden that keeps reseeding itself, no matter the season. That's your brain, quietly renewing its own soil. But the most tender truth about memory is that it's never only biological, it's emotional, communal, shared. When one person forgets, others remember for them. A friend's reminder, a photograph, a conversation can serve as scaffolding for lost recollection. The social brain, the networks that connect us to one another, help preserve what might otherwise fade. In that way, memory doesn't belong to one person. It's a fabric woven between many minds, kept alive through the telling and retelling of who we are. Even as some memories drift away, something in us remains constant. The awareness that we are, even without the full story of our past. Identity, it seems, is not a single thread, but a pattern. And when one thread frays, others hold the design together. You may forget the words of a song but still hum its tune. Forget the exact path home but still know which way the light falls. The brain, in its wisdom, keeps what it can, restores what it must, and lets go of what no longer serves. So when memory falters, it is not a failure of self. It is a reminder that remembering and forgetting are partners in the same dance, one giving space for the other, keeping the mind supple, open, and alive. The next time a thought slips away, imagine it not as loss, but as a leaf carried downstream, gone from sight, but still part of the river's flow. Somewhere in that water, it joins the rest of you, moving quietly toward the ocean of all you've been. As we drift onward from this reflection, the conversation of memory begins to soften into feeling. What we remember and what we forget both shape the heart, guiding every choice we make. The next step of our journey takes us there, into the music of emotion, the limbic orchestra that plays beneath every thought. If we follow the soft echo of memory through the corridors of the mind, we eventually arrive in a place that feels both ancient and intimate, the part of the brain that sings in feelings rather than words. Long before the first human spoke, before language or tools, this network was already playing. Scientists call it the limbic system, but you can think of it as a small orchestra within you, a collection of instruments that together perform the music of emotion. At its heart sits the amygdala, two almond-shaped clusters deep in the brain's centre. They are the percussion section, quick and instinctive, responding to every change in the emotional weather. When something startles you, a sudden sound, a shadow in your peripheral vision, the amygdala is the first to strike the drum. It doesn't wait for logic or analysis. It plays the rhythm of survival. The beat races down through your body, quickening the heart, tightening the muscles, flooding you with alertness. A few moments later, the prefrontal cortex of the conductor raises its hand asking for calm. It's only the wind, it says, and slowly the music settles back into quiet. Nearby, the hippocampus adds melody, the storyteller of experience. It remembers the emotional tone of past moments and compares them with the present, giving context to each feeling. When you walk into a room that smells like a childhood memory, it's the hippocampus that brings that past feeling back, weaving yesterday into today's score. Without it, the amygdala might strike too loudly, reacting to echoes of old fears without knowing why. The hippocampus reminds it of the narrative, that this is now, not then. Around them, the prefrontal cortex acts as the conductor, guiding the tempo. It listens to the orchestra's impulses and decides when to amplify or soften. This is where emotional intelligence lives, the ability to feel without being swept away. The prefrontal cortex doesn't silence emotion, it gives it shape, like a composer choosing which instruments should rise and which should rest. When this harmony is strong, we can feel deeply yet stay grounded. When it falters, we might overreact or feel numb, as if the orchestra has lost its balance. The rest of the limbic system, the hypothalamus, the nucleus accumbens, the cingulate, gyrus, adds texture and colour. The hypothalamus, small but powerful, links feeling to the body's rhythm. It controls the pulse, the temperature, the hormones that carry messages throughout the bloodstream. When you feel love, fear, hunger, or calm, it's because this tiny region has tuned the body to match the emotion. The nucleus accumbens, on the other hand, is the violin of joy. It plays the music of reward, the glow of satisfaction when you solve a problem, hear a favourite song, or share a laugh. Every note of pleasure, every hint of motivation passes through its strings. You can feel this orchestra at work every day. Think of that quick skip of your heart when your phone buzzes with a message from someone you love. The amygdala sets the beat. The nucleus accumbens adds warmth. The prefrontal cortex moderates excitement, reminding you to breathe. Or remember the calm after solving a puzzle or finishing a task you've been avoiding. The entire ensemble has moved through tension into resolution, ending on a note of quiet satisfaction. Emotions are often described as fleeting, but they are also precise. Each one is a message, a signal guiding your behaviour in ways that logic alone cannot. Fear warns you to pause, anger calls for boundaries, joy invites connection, sadness signals the need for care. These feelings are not flaws in reason, they are its foundation. The orchestra plays first so that the mind can follow. When emotion and thought align, the music becomes rich and complex. You might picture this harmony in a moment of awe, standing beneath a night sky, the smallness and vastness of existence blending into a single chord. The amygdala senses the immensity, the hippocampus recognizes the pattern, the prefrontal cortex allows you to linger there without fear. You feel something larger than comprehension, yet entirely human. The orchestra has found its perfect tempo. Of course, like any symphony, the limbic system can fall out of tune. Stress, exhaustion, and trauma can make the amygdala too loud, drowning out reason's softer instruments. When that happens, emotions can feel overwhelming or unpredictable. But even then, the orchestra can learn new harmony. Breathing, movement, mindfulness, All these are ways of helping the conductor regain control. Slow breathing sends signals through the valgus nerve, calming the hypothalamus, which in turn quiets the amygdala. The tempo slows, the strings soften, a sense of peace returns. This natural tuning process happens constantly, often without your awareness. The body and brain are in conversation, adjusting the emotional music moment by moment. When you pause to inhale deeply before speaking in anger, or when a friend's laughter lifts your mood, that's the orchestra retuning itself in real time. It's not magic, it's the harmony of biology. There's poetry in the idea that emotion is both ancient and fresh, that it evolved long before words, yet still composes every thought we have. Without emotion, logic would be hollow, and without logic, emotion would be chaos. Together, they make meaning. When you remember a happy moment, it's not the facts that bring warmth, it's the feeling echoing through the memory. When you make a decision, you don't weigh data alone. You listen for the subtle resonance of what feels right. The brain doesn't separate heart and mind, it orchestrates them. So, the next time your heart beats a little faster, or a sudden wave of sadness washes through you, imagine this orchestra at work. The amygdala's drums, the hippocampus's melody, the prefrontal cortex guiding them toward resolution. Even in sadness, the music is beautiful. It means you are alive, connected, responding to the world. The goal isn't to silence the orchestra, but to listen more closely, to understand when it plays softly for joy, when it rises in warning, and when it hums in the background, steady and faithful. As we follow this thread further, we'll see how emotions don't just colour our thoughts. They arrive before them, shaping what we notice and how we respond, long before words ever appear. Feelings, it turns out, are the first storytellers of the mind. If we listen more closely to the orchestra that plays inside us, we notice that the first notes often sound before thought begins. Feelings rise out of the body like mist before the mind has a chance to name them. A rush of warmth in the chest, a tightening in the stomach, a breath that catches halfway. The body knows before the brain explains. Emotion is not the decoration of consciousness, it's its foundation. It is the language the brain spoke long before words were invented. Imagine the world of an infant. There are no sentences yet, no stories, no plans, and yet the baby feels everything. Hunger, comfort, fear, delight. Every cry, every coo is a conversation carried through the rhythm of heartbeat and breath. The amygdala, that small drum of alarm, is already keeping time, learning which sounds mean safety, which sensations mean warmth. The prefrontal cortex, still young and quiet, will take years to grow into its role as conductor, but the orchestra is already rehearsing, guided by instinct and touch. The first lessons of life are emotional ones: when to seek, when to rest, when to reach out, when to trust. As adults, we like to imagine that logic leads the way, that our choices are sculpted by reason, not feeling. But the truth is more fluid. In the space of a heartbeat, before the conscious mind begins to weigh and measure, the emotional brain has already taken a position. It whispers its preference, adjusts your breathing, and tilts your attention toward what matters. The rational mind then arrives, not to create the decision, but to explain it. This isn't weakness, it's efficiency. Evolution favoured feeling first because it's fast. In a dangerous world, waiting to think could cost survival. You can feel this sequence in small, familiar moments. Picture walking down a staircase and missing a step. That quick surge of adrenaline before you even realise what's happened. Or meeting someone new and sensing kindness before they speak. These reactions happen in milliseconds. The amygdala catches signals from the senses and sends its message directly to the body, long before the prefrontal cortex has time to analyse. The body listens instantly. The pulse quickens or slows, muscles tense or release. Emotion is the first responder of experience. The fascinating part is that even when the body's initial signal is mistaken, the brain adapts. Once the cortex receives the full picture, it can calm the reaction, adding context and nuance. You might startle at a loud noise, then realise it was only a book falling. The prefrontal cortex gently tells the amygdala to stand down. The orchestra resolves its brief discord, the rhythm returns to normal. But the order of events, feeling first, thought second, never changes. That pattern is written into the oldest architecture of the brain. This design reveals something profound about the nature of being human. Logic and emotion are not enemies. They are partners in time. Emotion begins the conversation. Reason continues it. The two weave together to form perception. When you look at a painting, for example, your eyes send signals to the visual cortex, which recognizes shapes and colors. But almost instantly, the limbic system adds its tone: calm, awe, melancholy, turning a pattern of light into experience. Without that emotional tint, the world would feel flat, a movie with the sound turned off. Feeling is what gives reality its depth. Some researchers describe this process as embodied cognition, the idea that thought doesn't happen only in the head but throughout the body. Your gut, heart and skin all carry receptors that send information back to the brain, shaping emotion and awareness. That's why the term gut feeling isn't just a metaphor. The intestines, rich with nerve endings, talk constantly to the brain through a long highway called the vagus nerve. When something feels wrong, that subtle unease in your stomach is real communication. The body and brain are two instruments in the same ensemble responding to the same music. Our intuition, those moments when we just know, is born from this deep collaboration. Intuition isn't magic, it's experience distilled into speed. The brain compares present sensations with thousands of past memories, looking for familiar patterns. It doesn't present its findings as a sentence, but as a feeling, a whisper of certainty or hesitation. That's why experienced pilots, doctors, or artists often sense the right decision before they can explain it. Their emotional systems have become finely tuned instruments, capable of playing entire symphonies in a single instant. Even in conversation, emotion leads. Long before we process the words someone speaks, our brain has already interpreted their tone, facial expression, and rhythm of breath. Mirror neurons, small cells in the brain that fire when we see others act or feel, help us internalize what they experience. When someone smiles, a faint echo of their expression stirs in our own face. When someone's voice trembles, our chest tightens in empathy. This synchronization is the seed of compassion. We feel one another before we understand one another. Sometimes this emotional sensitivity can be overwhelming. In moments of grief, anger, or anxiety, the amygdala's rhythm grows too loud, drowning out the gentle voice of reason. The conductor struggles to be heard, but even then, there are ways to restore harmony. Simple actions, a slow breath, a steady gaze, a hand resting on the heart, can send calming signals through the same vagus nerve, lowering the volume of alarm. The orchestra listens, the tempo eases, the music returns to something you can dance with again. There's a quiet dignity in learning to listen to feelings without letting them take over. Emotions are like weather. They pass through, but they don't define the sky. When you observe them, name them softly, let them drift, they lose their sharp edges. I am angry becomes anger is moving through me. I am afraid becomes fear is visiting for a while. This difference is small, but it changes everything. You remain the listener, not the storm. It helps to remember that every emotion carries information. Sadness points toward what we value. Anger protects our boundaries. Fear keeps us cautious. Joy shows us where we belong. Ignoring emotion is like trying to read a book with half the pages missing. The story becomes incomplete. But when you accept feeling as part of knowledge, the mind becomes whole again, both wise and warm. So, when you next feel a spark of irritation or a swell of tenderness, try to notice it as the brain's first language speaking to you. You don't need to silence it or exaggerate it. Just listen. Beneath each feeling is an old rhythm, the pulse of survival, the echo of connection, the music that began before words. As we follow this melody further, we'll see how emotion doesn't simply arrive and fade. It can be guided, shaped, and soothed, not by control but by rhythm. The next step in our journey carries us toward that gentle art of balance, how breathing, mindfulness, and motion bring calm to the inner symphony of the mind. If we stay close to the orchestra of emotion a little longer, we begin to notice that its music doesn't always need a conductor's baton. Often it's guided by something even simpler, the rhythm of the body itself. Breath, heartbeat, and motion are the quiet instruments that tune the mind from beneath thought. They remind us that calm isn't a command. It's a balance that emerges when body and brain begin to listen to one another. Every breath you take is a message. When you inhale, the heart beats a little faster, preparing the body to act. When you exhale, it slows again, signaling that it's safe to rest. This subtle pattern, called respiratory rhythm, is like a tide that sweeps through every cell, carrying information far beyond the lungs. Nerves travelling from the chest to the brainstem send constant updates about the body's state. Among these pathways is one particularly special thread, the vagus nerve, a long wandering connection that runs from the brain down through the neck and into the heart, lungs, and stomach. Its name comes from the word vagrant, or wanderer, fitting for something that quietly connects so many parts of you. When you breathe slowly, the vagus nerve carries that softness upward, telling the brain to slow the heart, relax the muscles, and quiet the amygdala's restless drumming. This response is the opposite of the fight or flight reaction. It's sometimes called the rest and restore state, a calm that doesn't come from stillness but from harmony. You might feel it after a long sigh, a stretch, or the moment before sleep when the mind finally stops reaching. The orchestra shifts to a slower tempo, every instrument aware of the others. This conversation between body and brain happens constantly. You can sense it in the gentle weight of fatigue at the end of a day, or in the warmth that spreads when someone's voice softens your mood. When you hold a steady rhythm, in breathing, walking, or even rocking, the nervous system aligns itself to that pace. It's why lullabies work, why waves soothe, why a heartbeat calms a crying baby. The body loves rhythm. It feels safe in predictability. Every inhale and exhale is a reminder that peace is not the absence of motion, but motion made gentle. You can practice this tuning at any moment. Try slowing the breath just slightly, counting a few seconds as air moves in and a few more as it leaves. You don't need numbers or techniques. Your body already knows the pattern. As the lungs fill, the diaphragm lowers, the heart responds, and the vagus nerve carries the signal upward like a warm current. Within a few cycles, the brain's wave patterns begin to change too. The fast, sharp rhythms of alertness give way to slower, wider waves, the kind that appear when you feel safe, open, or creative. In these moments, the networks of focus and imagination work together, rather than competing. You become both grounded and expansive, steady yet thoughtful, like standing in the middle of a wide, calm lake. Movement offers the same medicine. A slow walk, a stretch, or even the rhythm of washing dishes can guide the mind toward balance. When the body moves with awareness, signals flow through the cerebellum, the part of the brain that manages coordination and timing, and ripple outward to emotional centers. This coordination helps regulate the entire system. It's why yoga, dance, and even the sway of a hammock can feel restorative. They remind the brain of its own natural tempo, which can get lost in the noise of modern speed. Even sound can help restore balance. The human nervous system responds deeply to tone and cadence. A slow, steady voice, or a melody with long, smooth notes can slow the heart and relax tension. This is the same principle that makes lullabies universal, or why rhythmic drumming in ancient rituals could lead to trance-like calm. The auditory cortex passes these patterns to deeper regions that control movement and emotion, aligning their rhythms. It's not so much that music relaxes us, rather, it entrains us, synchronizes the pulses of our inner orchestra until they move as one. There's a kind of quiet genius in this design. The brain doesn't need complex instructions to calm itself. It listens to the simplest cues, the breath, the heartbeat, the sway of motion, the hum of sound. This harmony is self-reinforcing. When the body settles, the brain relaxes. When the brain quiets, the body follows. Each helps the other find equilibrium. In mindfulness practices, this loop becomes visible. You might sit in silence, feeling each breath pass like a slow wave. At first, thoughts chatter, lists, worries, fragments of conversation. But as you stay with the rhythm, the waves begin to lengthen, the chatter fades into background hum. The body recognizes safety, and the mind responds. Over time, even a few breaths can become an anchor, a way of returning home to balance. Science now observes this in brain scans. Regions associated with attention and emotion grow thicker and more connected in those who meditate regularly. But you don't need an image to believe it. You can feel it. The same principle applies to connection with others. When two people speak calmly, their breathing, heart rates, and brain waves begin to synchronize, a process called physiological resonance. It happens naturally between parent and child, between close friends, or even during shared laughter. It's why calm is contagious. When someone near you breathes slowly or speaks gently, your body often matches their rhythm without effort. The orchestra expands beyond the borders of the self, becoming a duet, a trio, or an entire ensemble of shared calm. Sometimes we forget that balance isn't a permanent state, it's a dynamic one, a conversation between energy and rest, tension and release. Just as waves need both crest and trough, emotional regulation depends on movement. Anger, grief, excitement, joy, all are part of the same current. Balance means letting each emotion play its note, then return to quiet. When we suppress feelings, the rhythm grows jagged. When we allow them to pass, the music smooths out again. To feel peace, you don't have to silence the orchestra. You simply have to help it find tempo. Each breath, each heartbeat, each step is an opportunity to tune the instruments again, and in that process, emotion becomes not an enemy to control, but a rhythm to accompany. If you ever find yourself lost in noise, the rush of tasks, the swirl of thoughts, pause for a moment and listen inward. Somewhere beneath it all, there's a faint, steady pulse, a breath rising and falling, a reminder that the music of calm has never stopped. It only waits for you to notice. As we drift onward from this quiet balance, the same harmony that brings calm also opens space for creation. When body and emotion align, the mind becomes free to wander, to connect distant ideas, to imagine, to dream. The next step in our journey carries us there, into the gentle, luminous sea of creativity and daydream. If you were to peer into the brain while it rests, no task, no conversation, just quiet breathing and stillness, you might expect to find it mostly silent. But the truth is almost the opposite. In those moments when you seem to be doing nothing, the brain is at its most introspective and interconnected. It begins to glow with activity, like a landscape lit only by moonlight, soft but alive. The regions that awaken during this time form what scientists call the default mode network, a constellation of areas that talk to each other when you daydream, imagine, or simply let your thoughts wander. Yet network is such a mechanical word. You could think of it instead as an ocean, vast, slow and deep, where your mind drifts when it is free to roam. This sea of thought is different from the focused, task-driven state of the waking day. When you concentrate on solving a problem or following instructions, the brain's attention circuits take charge, narrowing the lens of awareness. But when that focus relaxes, the edges of attention soften and the default mode rises like the tide returning to shore. In that ebb and flow between doing and being, the mind finds its rhythm. One moment it is anchored in the present, counting breaths, noticing light. The next, it drifts into memories, future plans, or imagined worlds. Far from being idle, this wandering state stitches your past and future together, creating the seamless sense of me that continues through time. You can feel this when your mind drifts naturally, gazing out a window, watching clouds move, hearing a familiar melody. Thoughts begin to loosen, like leaves carried by wind. One memory connects to another, sometimes through logic, sometimes through feeling. You might remember a conversation from last week which leads to a childhood scene, which leads to wondering what dinner will be tonight. The journey has no map, yet somehow it makes sense. The brain uses this meandering to organize itself, replaying what it's learned, blending it with imagination, finding patterns too subtle for conscious focus to catch. This wandering is also the birthplace of creativity. When you're not pushing for answers, the brain's quiet connections have room to meet. Regions responsible for logic, language, memory and emotion begin to share information across distances they normally keep. The result is unexpected combinations. The idea that arrives in the shower, the solution that appears during a walk, the line of a poem that writes itself as you fall asleep. These insights are not accidents. They're the default mode at work, weaving fragments into coherence. It's easy to underestimate this slow work because it feels effortless. We're taught to value focus, productivity, goals, progress, as if the mind were a tool that must always be pointed somewhere. But focus is only half the process. Without periods of release, the brain would overheat like an engine never turned off. The wandering state is its natural form of cooling, of recalibrating. It's the mind's way of stretching its limbs after too much effort. In fact, when scientists measure energy use, the brain at rest consumes nearly the same power as when it's solving difficult problems. The difference lies in purpose. During rest, the purpose is reflection. The brain isn't idle, it's integrating. If you've ever tried to remember a name and failed, only for it to pop into your mind hours later while washing dishes, that's the default mode's gift. While your conscious attention moved on, the background networks kept searching quietly until the connection was made. It's a reminder that your mind continues to care for your unfinished thoughts, even when you stop thinking about them. There is another beauty in this state. It's where imagination lives. When you picture yourself in another place, or replay a conversation that hasn't yet happened, the same regions that activate during real experience come to life. The brain rehearses possibility. That's why imagining a walk through a forest can slow your breathing, or remembering a loved one can make your heart ache. The default mode is not bound by time or space. It lets you travel inward, creating landscapes of thought as vividly as any external scene. Still, this freedom has its shadows. When left unchecked, the same wandering can drift into rumination, replaying worries or regrets until they echo endlessly. The mind sea can turn stormy, but even then the solution is not to stop the tide but to guide it. Gentle awareness, noticing the thought, then letting it pass, acts like a lighthouse, keeping you from being lost. Mindfulness doesn't end daydreaming, it teaches you to steer through it without judgment. The goal is not to silence the default mode, but to balance it with the focused mind, allowing both to share their wisdom. The interplay between these two states, focused and unfocused, forms the rhythm of a healthy mind. Focus lets us build, wandering lets us see. One constructs the bridge, the other imagines where it might lead. You can sense this in any creative act: writing, painting, problem solving. Moments of intense concentration are followed by pauses of release. The mind steps back, lets go, and in that letting go, new insight arises. You don't need a laboratory to witness this. Just step outside and watch how your attention behaves. At first you might notice details: leaves, movement, sound. Then, as your gaze softens, thoughts begin to flow. The present and the imagined weave together. A memory of a past walk, a dream of a future one. They coexist gently. That's the default mode's art: to connect what was, what is, and what could be into one continuous thread. In the quiet spaces of daily life, the default mode whispers to you. It speaks through the half-formed thought that feels important, through the hum of curiosity that lingers after you close a book, through the sense that your story has shape even when you can't see it fully. It is the background music of the self. So, the next time your mind drifts during a meeting, a train ride, or a quiet evening alone, don't rush to pull it back. Let it wander a little. It might be tending to something unfinished, planting the seeds of a future idea, or simply reminding you that thinking and dreaming are not opposites. They are partners, taking turns guiding the oars of the same boat. As we drift further along this journey, that quiet sea will carry us to a familiar yet misunderstood horizon, the two hemispheres of the brain, often said to be at odds, but in truth engaged in a duet. One brings rhythm and precision, the other melody and imagination. Together they play the music of thought itself. For most of history, people have loved to imagine the brain as a place divided: logic on one side, emotion on the other, calculation and creativity forever competing for control. The story is charming, but like many simple stories, it isn't quite true. The brain's two hemispheres are less rivals than partners in an exquisite duet, each with its own tone, its own rhythm, and a shared melody that can only exist when both are playing. If you could lift the brain's delicate folds apart, you'd find that it is roughly symmetrical. Two mirror halves joined by a bundle of fibers called the corpus callosum, a shimmering bridge of millions of tiny connections. This bridge carries a constant exchange of signals, allowing the left and right sides to coordinate their work. Yet their specializations give each hemisphere its unique voice. The left hemisphere is often described as the analyst, attuned to detail, language, and sequence. It loves structure, grammar, counting, and categories. The right hemisphere, meanwhile, is the dreamer. It perceives the whole before the parts, the music before the notes. It handles tone, context, emotion, and the broader patterns that make life feel connected. But the truth is softer than these labels. Every action, from tying a shoe to composing a melody, draws on both. When you speak, for instance, the left hemisphere shapes words and syntax, while the right interprets tone, rhythm, and intention. When you paint or write, one side manages movement and planning, while the other breathes colour and metaphor into your vision. The brain's beauty lies not in its division, but in its collaboration. You might imagine them as two hands at a piano. The left hand provides the structure, the steady chords and rhythm. The right hand plays the melody, stretching into new harmonies, exploring emotion. Alone, each hand would sound incomplete. Together, they create music. The corpus callosum is the invisible sheet of air between the hands, allowing timing and feeling to align. It doesn't conduct, it listens, ensuring the notes find each other across the divide. We can feel this duet in our everyday moments. Think of solving a problem. At first, your left brain steps forward, sorting through steps and logic. But when you hit a wall and step away, taking a walk, staring at the sky, the right brain begins to wander, making unexpected connections. Then suddenly, an idea surfaces, seemingly from nowhere. It isn't magic, It's the two hemispheres finishing each other's phrases. The insight feels sudden because the conversation between them was silent, and you only noticed when the harmony resolved. The same partnership shapes emotion and reason. The right hemisphere senses tone, a raised eyebrow, a tremor in someone's voice, while the left translates it into meaning. They're upset, it concludes, allowing you to respond with understanding rather than confusion. Without the right side's intuition, the left might miss the feeling. Without the left structure, the right might drown in impressions. Together they form empathy, logic guided by compassion. Even the simplest movements depend on this duet. The right hemisphere controls the muscles of the left side of your body, and the left controls the right. When you walk, speak, or reach for something, both sides are engaged, alternating in perfect rhythm. This crossing of control is more than anatomy. It's a reminder that the brain was never meant to choose sides. Every gesture, every thought is the result of cooperation. Artists and scientists alike experience this balance. A painter uses the analytical precision of geometry to compose a scene, but relies on intuition to choose colours that evoke emotion. A mathematician feels the rhythm of an equation as much as its logic, sensing beauty in symmetry and pattern. The boundary between creativity and reasoning blurs because they're built from the same clay. The two hemispheres also balance how we perceive time. The left often lives in the linear. It tracks sequences, steps, cause and effect. The right moves in circles, perceiving flow and simultaneity. When you follow a recipe, your left brain measures. When you savour the aroma of the dish, the right immerses you in the moment. A healthy mind drifts gently. Between these modes, measuring and marvelling, planning and presence, a dance between clock and tide. Children display this harmony naturally. They can leap from imagination to explanation in an instant, building a castle from blocks, then describing its defences as if they were engineering blueprints. The hemispheres haven't yet learned to argue. They share freely, switching between logic and wonder without friction. As we grow older, many of us lean too heavily toward one side, the analytical or the intuitive, mistaking balance for indecision. But creativity and clarity both bloom when the brain is allowed to breathe between the two. The communication between hemispheres even affects emotion regulation. When the right hemisphere perceives sadness or fear, the left can help contextualize it, telling the story of what happened, transforming sensation into understanding. This is why journaling or talking about emotions can be healing. Language, largely a left hemisphere skill, gives structure to feelings born in the right. It doesn't erase pain, it translates it, giving it edges so the mind can hold it without being swallowed. In a way, each hemisphere is a lens through which we view the world. The right shows us connection, colour, and empathy, the forest. The left reveals pattern, order, and precision, the trees. When they work together, we see the entire landscape vibrant and coherent. When they drift apart, the world can feel either chaotic or sterile. Harmony isn't automatic. It's learned through experience, attention, and the willingness to let one hand rest while the other takes the lead. You can practice this harmony in daily life. Reading engages both hemispheres, one decoding letters, the other interpreting emotion. Walking in nature invites rhythm and reflection. Listening to music activates nearly every region across both sides, lighting up the brain like sunrise spilling across hills. In each of these, the hemispheres trade leadership naturally, one emphasizing detail, the other the whole. The more we allow this cooperation, the more resilient our minds become, flexible, creative, calm. Perhaps that's why so many great ideas, discoveries, and works of art seem to carry both clarity and wonder. The best thinking doesn't come from silencing one half of ourselves, but from letting them sing together, the precise and the poetic, the measured and the mysterious. So the next time you hear someone say they are left-brained or right-brained, smile softly at the simplicity of it. The truth is gentler, richer. You are whole-brained. You're a duet, not a duel, and every thought you have, every spark of understanding or empathy, is born from their ongoing conversation across that shining bridge of connection. As we follow that bridge further, its music grows playful and alive, the rhythm of curiosity, the spark of invention. The next part of our journey carries us into the moment when those harmonies ignite into something new, creativity itself, the gentle collision of memory and imagination where ideas begin to glow. There is a quiet moment that comes before every new idea, that pause where something unseen begins to stir. It could happen anywhere, in the shower, in traffic, while staring at the ceiling just before sleep. You aren't thinking on purpose, and yet the mind seems to be working in secret, turning faint sparks into patterns. Then, suddenly, a thought arrives. Not a command, not a demand, but a whisper, a small click of understanding, the light bulb moment. To the brain, creativity is not a single event, but a conversation between many regions, some busy with memory, others steeped in emotion, some watching patterns unfold while others decide which ones to keep. It's the duet of hemispheres continuing its dance, now joined by a larger ensemble. The prefrontal cortex, the planner and problem solver, works with the wandering networks that thrive during daydream. Logic meets reverie, and together they build something that neither could make alone. When you imagine a new idea, the brain draws from a reservoir of what it already knows. It searches old memories for shapes that might fit together in new ways. A scientist thinking of an experiment, a painter choosing colours, a cook improvising a recipe. All are reaching into memory and bending it gently. The hippocampus provides the raw materials, fragments of past experience, while the default mode network lays them on the table. The executive centres then step in, arranging, refining, shaping. The process is not linear, it's cyclical, spiralling through possibility until something catches. This is why inspiration feels mysterious. It doesn't appear from nothing. It rises from connections that have been quietly forming below awareness, like roots intertwining underground before a single green shoot breaks through the soil. When the idea emerges, it feels sudden, but the preparation has been ongoing, the result of countless small collisions between thoughts, emotions, and sensory memories. Emotion plays its part too. The brain releases small bursts of reward chemicals, dopamine among them, when a new connection seems promising. It's a subtle shimmer of possibility, a gentle encouragement that says, yes, keep going. The pleasure of discovery is not an accident of evolution. It's the engine that keeps curiosity alive. Every small insight, every tiny aha, triggers that same quiet glow, reinforcing the pattern of exploration. The brain learns to love learning. You can feel this in moments of play. Think of how children explore the world, endlessly experimenting, combining sticks and stones, words and drawings, ideas and laughter. Their brains are in constant dialogue between order and chaos, trying and failing, connecting and breaking apart. Adults carry the same potential, though we often disguise it under planning and purpose. True creativity is simply the permission to wander again, to let the mind play without expecting results. The conditions that nurture these sparks are often simple: a bit of quiet, a bit of safety, a bit of curiosity. Stress, fear, and urgency tend to close the doors of imagination. When the body feels threatened, the amygdala calls the mind to focus on survival, precise, narrow, immediate. Creativity requires the opposite state, one of openness and curiosity. That's why ideas bloom during a walk, a shower, or while listening to gentle music. The nervous system is calm. The orchestra is tuned to collaboration rather than defense. Sometimes the best ideas arrive disguised as accidents: a wrong turn in a sketch, a misplaced ingredient, a slip of the tongue. These moments of error invite novelty. The brain, quick to notice patterns, suddenly sees new possibilities in what seemed a mistake. This playful adaptability has shaped human progress. Many discoveries, from penicillin to the microwave, began with serendipity and a mind willing to wonder rather than dismiss. Creativity in this sense is the art of curiosity without judgment, but not every spark becomes a flame. The brain must balance openness with discernment. Once an idea forms, other regions, the frontal lobes, the evaluators, begin to test it. Is it useful? Is it true? Is it beautiful? This process is gentle editing, not censorship. It's how daydream becomes design, how impulse becomes invention. The balance between imagination and valuation is delicate, and when achieved, it feels effortless, like improvising a melody that somehow fits perfectly with the music already playing. You can see this interplay in the creative rituals of everyday life. The writer who scribbles lines by candlelight, the gardener planning next spring's blooms, the teacher inventing a better way to explain a concept, all are working with the same circuitry. Each act of creation, no matter how small, lights up the brain's reward centers and strengthens the bridge between thought and emotion. Creativity isn't limited to art or science. It's any moment when the brain allows itself to transform the ordinary into possibility. There's also a spiritual calm in realizing that imagination never truly ends. Even dreams are a kind of nightly artistry. While you sleep, the brain continues to weave images and stories, combining fragments of memory into surreal mosaics. The dream world might seem strange, but it serves the same purpose: to experiment safely with ideas and emotions, to rehearse responses to life's uncertainties. In dreams, as in waking creativity, the mind practices being flexible, resilient, and alive. What makes creativity beautiful is that it's both universal and unique. Every brain has the same instruments, but each arranges them differently. The way you solve a problem, tell a story, or comfort a friend is a reflection of your own wiring, shaped by every experience you've ever had. Your creativity doesn't need to be grand to be meaningful. Sometimes it's as small as finding a new route home, as personal as making a meal taste exactly like childhood. These are sparks too, quiet acts of reimagining that keep the brain's inner light glowing. When you feel stuck, remember that the silence before inspiration isn't emptiness, it's incubation. Beneath the stillness, the networks are conversing, layering ideas like musicians tuning before the first note. All you have to do is make space for them to be heard. Step away, breathe, rest your gaze on something simple. The idea will find you when the conditions are right, like a bird that lands only when the world feels safe enough to be still. So, the next time a thought surprises you, treat it gently. Let curiosity follow it for a while, without rushing to define or judge. You're witnessing the oldest art form in the universe, the transformation of pattern into meaning, of memory into something new. Creativity isn't just what the brain does, it's what the brain is. A self-writing story, forever improvising, forever becoming. As we drift further along, that same creativity leads us to the threshold of mystery. The question that underlies all others: how does awareness arise from these patterns at all? How do sparks of thought become the light of consciousness? That quiet puzzle is where our journey now turns. What is it like right now to be you? Not in words or descriptions, not as a list of facts, but as a feeling. The warmth behind your eyes, the rhythm of your breathing, the quiet awareness that somehow knows it is here. If you close your eyes for a moment, the world doesn't vanish. It simply folds inward. You can still sense your body, still hear sounds, still think. But beyond all of that is a subtler layer. The watcher, the listener, the experiencer. That presence, silent and steady, is consciousness itself. And though we live within it every second, it remains one of the greatest mysteries the mind has ever tried to understand. You might picture your brain as a vast constellation of activity, billions of cells exchanging signals, lightning moving across a field of stars. From the outside, it's a marvel of chemistry and motion. But from the inside, there is something more, the texture of experience. A thought doesn't feel like electricity, it feels like meaning. A colour doesn't feel like a wavelength of light, it feels like beauty. The mystery lies in that translation, how matter becomes mind, how silent impulses become the song of awareness. The philosopher's question, the one that lingers like a whisper through centuries, is simple but profound. Why is there something it is like to be you? Why do these neural patterns not only compute but also feel? Why does pain sting? Why does laughter shimmer? Why does music move you to tears? No microscope has yet found the line where signal becomes sensation. And yet, here we are, living proof that it happens. To grasp this, we might begin not with science, but with sensation. Think of tasting a cup of tea. The warmth spreads through your tongue, the faint bitterness of leaves touches your senses, steam drifts upward to meet your breath. 1,000 chemical reactions occur across your taste buds, sending waves of information to your brain. But what you experience isn't data, it's flavour, comfort, memory. The same with sound. Air vibrates, eardrums tremble, neurons fire, and somehow that becomes music. Rain tapping against glass, a voice saying your name, the heartbeat you hear in the silence before sleep. All of them are turned by your mind into something more than physical vibration. They become moments that belong to you. If we follow that experience inward, we find no single place where consciousness resides. It isn't located in one neuron or one region. It's the symphony of them all playing together. Scientists have identified patterns, rhythms, and networks that seem to correspond with awareness. Waves that synchronize across the brain when we're awake and fade during deep anesthesia. But these are only footprints. The feeling of being is not something we can measure directly. It's the canvas on which measurement itself is painted. Perhaps consciousness is like light, not a thing we can touch, but what makes touching visible. When you wake in the morning, there's a brief moment before memory returns, before thoughts begin. In that instant, awareness exists without identity. It doesn't yet remember who you are, where you are, or what day it is. It simply is. From that stillness, the self begins to rise. Names, faces, plans, worries, like stars appearing in the twilight of waking. The mind rebuilds the story of you each morning and you step into it as naturally as breathing. The experience of self, then, may be the brain's most elegant illusion. Not a lie, but a necessary trick. The mind gathers sensations, memories, and emotions, binds them together, and calls the bundle I. It's a way of navigating the world, of keeping continuity in the constant flow of change. Without that narrative thread, life would feel like a series of disconnected flashes. But deep beneath the story, awareness remains, a background hum that never quite stops, even in sleep. When you dream, that awareness continues to play, crafting whole worlds from memory and imagination. When you meditate, it grows clearer, revealing itself as the space between thoughts. Even when you're lost in a busy day, it's still there, the quiet witness behind your eyes. You can test this in any moment. Pause, breathe, notice that you are noticing. The act of awareness observing itself is both ordinary and miraculous. It's the closest thing we have to seeing the soul at work, though science calls it by gentler names. Some describe consciousness as the ocean and thoughts as waves rising and falling upon its surface. The waves come and go, ideas, sensations, emotions, but the ocean remains. You might be caught in a storm of thinking, the surface wild and restless, but deep below, the water is calm. That calm isn't separate from you, it is you. The part of mind that experiences without judgment. It's the space where perception happens, the quiet stage upon which all sensations play. Others imagine consciousness as a mirror, perfectly clear, reflecting whatever appears before it without clinging. When anger comes, it reflects anger. When joy comes, it reflects joy. When emptiness comes, it reflects even that. The mirror doesn't change, though what it shows always does. Awareness, like that mirror, is constant, luminous, and quietly accepting. In the language of the brain, this mirror is the synchronized dance of countless cells, a rhythm of electrical waves passing between distant regions, linking sensation with emotion, memory with perception. But no equation can capture the shimmer of being itself. We can describe the movements, the signals, the timing, but not the feeling of feeling. That is the essence of consciousness. It is what transforms mechanism into mystery. It may be that consciousness is not something the brain produces, but something it reveals, the way a radio translates invisible waves into music. The signal was already there, the brain simply tunes to it. Or perhaps consciousness is woven into the very fabric of matter, an inherent quality of complexity, emerging wherever information and energy interact in harmony. These are questions science still holds gently, like a seashell against the ear, listening for an answer that has yet to arrive. What we do know is that awareness binds everything together. It is the thread through sensation, memory, emotion, and thought. The reason you can feel continuity across all the changes of your life. It's what makes experience personal, what makes each heartbeat uniquely yours. As you listen now, the words form in your mind as patterns of sound, meaning, and feeling. But beneath them all is the simple fact of awareness, the silent field that receives everything, judges nothing, and allows the story of you to unfold moment by moment. That field is your truest home. So, take a slow breath and rest for a moment in that space. Notice that even as thoughts drift in and out, something remains still, clear, and softly luminous beneath them. That is consciousness, the most familiar thing in the world, and yet the greatest mystery we know. As we drift further into this mystery, the next step of our journey will shine a light upon the structure of awareness itself, how the brain decides what enters this inner theatre, and how attention becomes the spotlight that turns perception into experience. If consciousness is the gentle light that fills your inner world, then attention is the beam that gives it shape. It decides what stands in clarity and what drifts into shadow. Imagine a quiet theatre at dusk, the curtains drawn, the air still. The stage is your mind, wide, empty, waiting. All around, behind the scenes, thousands of actors prepare, the senses with their props, the memories waiting for cues, the emotions rehearsing lines they've spoken 1,000 times. Then, suddenly, a spotlight flicks on. Wherever it moves, the world appears. That is the play of awareness. This is the heart of what scientists call the global workspace theory, a simple idea made poetic. Your mind is like a stage upon which certain thoughts, sensations and perceptions are illuminated for the audience of consciousness. The rest, all the silent background processing, the sounds you ignore, the sensations you forget, remains in the dark wings, active but unseen. Every few seconds the light moves. It might fall on the taste of your coffee, on the sound of a bird, on a passing worry or a sudden memory. Each time, the actors that find themselves under the light become part of the story you call now. The brain is astonishingly selective. At any moment, your senses send millions of bits of information: light, sound, texture, pressure, warmth. But awareness can hold only a handful at once. Attention filters the flood, allowing a manageable stream to flow across the stage. What becomes conscious isn't necessarily what's most important, but what wins the quiet competition for your focus. You might think you're simply noticing the world, but in truth, Your mind is directing a performance, choosing which scenes to bring into view. You can feel this selection in action. When you read, the words in front of you seem to glow with meaning, while the world around you fades to background hum. Yet if someone calls your name, the spotlight shifts in an instant. What was invisible, the sound of your own breath, the rustle of leaves outside, suddenly becomes vivid again. Attention can pivot in a heartbeat, guided by novelty, relevance, or emotion. Sometimes it turns by choice, sometimes by instinct. Either way, it shapes the flow of consciousness like a lantern sweeping across a darkened room. This movement between light and shadow is what gives the mind its rhythm. While one thought or sensation takes center stage, countless others wait backstage, quietly influencing the show. These unseen processes handle the automatic: your heartbeat, posture, language comprehension, the coordination of muscles that keep you balanced. They don't need the spotlight because they've rehearsed their roles so well. But if something unexpected happens, pain, danger, delight, they call for light, and suddenly the script changes. The theatre metaphor isn't just poetic, it's physiological. When you focus on something, regions deep in your brain, particularly within the prefrontal and parietal cortices, synchronize their activity, amplifying signals from relevant areas while muting the rest. This coordination creates the sensation of a unified you observing a single scene. Neuroscientists sometimes describe this process as broadcasting, information from one network being sent across the entire brain, making it globally available for reflection, memory, and decision. You don't need to picture neurons or wires to understand it. It's simply the way attention turns local sensations into shared experience. Everyday life offers small glimpses of this spotlight in motion. When you drive a familiar road, your attention drifts easily, the body handling steering and speed automatically. But if a shape appears suddenly, a child near the curb, a flash of red light, the beam snaps into focus. Consciousness zooms in, time slows, and awareness sharpens to a point. Once the moment passes, the light widens again, softening into its usual glow. The mind's ability to contract and expand like this, to move between detail and openness, is one of its most elegant abilities. Yet attention is not limited to what we see. It also shines inward, onto thoughts and feelings. You might catch yourself replaying a conversation, noticing a subtle emotion, or imagining a possibility. The same spotlight that illuminates the outer world can turn gently toward the inner one. In that moment, you become both actor and audience. The thinker watching thought, the feeler feeling feeling. Meditation practices often begin with this simple act, noticing where the light is pointing, then allowing it to rest wherever awareness naturally lands. Sometimes, though, the spotlight becomes restless. It can cling to a worry, replaying it again and again, or scatter too widely, leaving you unfocused and anxious. When this happens, gentle grounding helps: breathing, movement, or sensory attention. Each act steadies the light, reminding it of its rhythm. After all, attention is not meant to be rigid. It's meant to dance. Its grace lies in fluidity, the ability to shift without strain. There's also beauty in the fact that not everything makes it to the stage. The darkness surrounding awareness is not emptiness, it's foundation. All your unconscious processes, intuition, reflex, habit, work quietly in the wings, providing stability for what's in the light. Without them, consciousness would be overwhelmed. The unseen mind carries most of life's weight, so that the seen mind can marvel, decide, and dream. Even memory works by this dance of illumination. When a memory comes, it steps briefly into light, replaying itself as if for the first time. You see its actors, feel its emotions, hear its sounds, and then it recedes, making room for the next scene. Consciousness is, in this way, a kind of film that never stops projecting, though only one frame is visible at a time. What we call the present moment is the slice of the reel that happens to be under the light. The rest of time waits in the dark, humming quietly, until you turn the lamp toward it again. This perspective helps explain why moments of focus can feel so vivid. When attention narrows, listening to a piece of music, watching sunset, the stage goes quiet. The light holds steady. For a while, there's only one scene, one experience. These are the moments that feel timeless, when the boundary between observer and observed begins to blur. The audience leans forward, the actors disappear into their roles, and the play becomes real. This is presence, the purest form of awareness the brain can create. And perhaps that is the true gift of the spotlight. It doesn't just show us the world, it creates the experience of being in it. Without attention, perception would be a jumble of fragments. With it, life becomes a coherent play, a sequence of scenes stitched into meaning. You might even say that attention is the painter of consciousness, brushing light across the canvas of mind, turning static into story. So, the next time you catch your awareness shifting, from sound to thought, from inside to out, imagine that small spotlight gliding gently across the stage, illuminating what matters most for this moment. The play is endless, but the light is yours to move. As we follow its glow further, we'll see that this light of attention is not solitary. It is part of a larger harmony, a chorus of signals working together to form the fullness of experience. The next step of our journey takes us there, to the idea that consciousness is not a single voice, but a choir singing in exquisite unity. If the mind spotlight is what lets certain thoughts appear on stage, then what keeps the whole theatre glowing with coherence? Beneath the shifting beam of attention, something quieter and grander unfolds, a continuous symphony of communication, where billions of neurons exchange their electric whispers and somehow form a single melody. You could call this harmony, or integration, or simply the feeling of being oneself. Scientists sometimes describe this balance between complexity and unity through something called integrated information theory. But you don't need the terminology to understand it. Imagine standing in a cathedral filled with a choir. Each voice sings its own note, rich and distinct, yet together they create a single piece of music. If you remove one voice, the sound changes. If every singer sang alone, there would be no harmony, only fragments. Consciousness, in this view, is that harmony itself, the way the brain's countless notes combine into one continuous song. In more technical language, this harmony can be thought of as the measure of how beautifully the brain's parts work together while still keeping their individuality. The visual regions interpret shapes and colours, the auditory regions hum with sound, memory recalls, emotion colours, and reasoning organises. Each is specialised, yet none is isolated. Every instant information flows between them, weaving a tapestry that is both intricate and whole. The richer and more connected the pattern, the more vivid the experience feels. You might sense this when you're fully present, listening to a piece of music that moves you, watching a sunset, or laughing with someone you love. In those moments, thought, feeling, and perception align so completely that you forget to divide them. There's no observer and observed, no background or foreground, just one seamless moment of being. That's what integration feels like, many parts becoming one experience. To visualize it, imagine light passing through a stained glass window. Each pane has its own color and shape, but when sunlight shines through them all together, they project a single, glowing image on the floor. That image isn't found in any one piece of glass. It exists only in their harmony. Your brain works much the same way. The experience of you is the pattern that emerges when all your mental fragments align in illumination. The beauty of this harmony is that it's not static. The brain is never still. Its networks are constantly reconfiguring, forming new connections as circumstances shift. When you focus intently, certain regions synchronize tightly, producing clarity. When you relax or dream, connections loosen, allowing imagination and emotion to mix freely. In waking life, these two modes, precision and freedom, alternate like breathing in and out. The mind's stability arises not from rigidity, but from its flexibility, its ability to stay whole while constantly reshaping itself. This flow is not confined to the brain alone. The body joins the choir too. The heartbeat, the rhythm of breath, the pulse of hormones, all send information back to the nervous system. Each cell participates in the overall resonance, adding its faint vibration to the song of consciousness. The boundaries between mind and body, between self and world, are thinner than they seem. The harmony that forms you is inseparable from the larger harmony around you, the music of life itself. Sometimes this integration falters. During deep sleep, anesthesia, or certain injuries, the communication between brain regions quiets, and the song fades into silence. When people awaken from such states, they often describe it not as being gone, but as time having skipped. The orchestra paused, the lights dimmed. The return of consciousness feels like the moment a symphony resumes, the instruments finding each other again after a long rest. Even in dreamless sleep, the potential for music remains, the score waiting patiently for the first note to sound. There's something humbling in realizing that your sense of self is not a single voice but an ensemble. The thought you're having right now is the product of thousands of tiny collaborations, sensory impressions, emotional echoes, memories, and subtle expectations, all synchronized so quickly you could never separate them. Consciousness is not one thing watching the others. It's the meeting point where they all become one. The miracle isn't that the brain has parts, it's that the parts never forget how to listen to one another. This idea extends far beyond the boundaries of neuroscience. In art, music, and even society, we recognize the same principle. Unity does not mean uniformity. A painting's beauty depends on contrast. An orchestra's power comes from its diversity. The harmony of information is not achieved by silencing differences, but by letting them coexist in resonance. In that sense, every conscious moment is a miniature universe, balanced between variety and connection. Think, for example, of watching a fire. The light flickers, the air warms, the wood crackles, separate sensations, yet together they form an experience that feels whole. Or recall the feeling of being in conversation with a friend, where your thoughts and theirs seem to weave into a single thread of understanding. These are the small human glimpses of integration, the brain reflecting the same harmony that underlies galaxies and ecosystems, where complexity breathes together in elegant order. If you could listen to your brain as music, you'd hear waves rising and falling at many tempos, some fast, some slow, synchronizing across vast distances. Scientists have measured these rhythms as gentle oscillations of electrical activity, each representing a dialogue between regions. But it isn't the frequency that matters, it's their coordination. When the waves line up, consciousness sharpens. When they drift apart, awareness dims. It's as if the brain must continually tune itself, like an orchestra preparing for performance, so that every instrument plays in time. The measure of this harmony, the degree to which differentiation and unity coexist, is what some call phi. But let's translate that number into something softer, the measure of how beautifully the parts work together. You don't need to know the calculation. You felt it every time your mind clicked into effortless flow, writing a sentence that seems to write itself, catching a ball before you think, or understanding a piece of music as if it were written for you alone. In those moments, the mind doesn't analyze harmony. It is harmony. Maybe that's the truest image of consciousness, not a flickering screen of neurons, but a living chord resonating through the architecture of being. Each of us carries that chord, unique in timbre but part of the same grand composition. We are notes in a universal harmony, brief yet necessary, shaping the sound of the whole. And just as every melody needs rhythm, every harmony needs direction. The next whisper in our exploration belongs to the part of the brain that guides perception through expectation, the quiet artist that paints the world before you see it. As we drift onward, we'll meet that gentle painter, the brain as fortune teller, predicting reality before it arrives. Imagine waking up in the soft grey of early morning. Before your eyes even open, your mind already knows where you are. You expect the shape of the room, the faint colour of light through the curtains, perhaps the scent of coffee if someone's already in the kitchen. When you do open your eyes, the world arrives exactly as you predicted, or nearly so. That moment where expectation meets sensation is where perception begins. The human brain is not a passive receiver of the world. It is a restless artist, forever painting reality in advance and then adjusting the brush strokes when the light hits differently than expected. Scientists call this way of understanding the mind predictive processing, but we can describe it more softly. Your brain is a quiet fortune teller, whispering guesses about what comes next, and most of the time, it's right. This constant guessing is not a flaw, it's efficiency. The senses send only limited information, a faint sketch of the outside world. To make sense of it quickly enough to survive, the brain fills in the gaps using memory and pattern. When you see a chair, you don't process every line and shadow anew. You recognize it instantly because your mind already holds a model of what a chair should be. Each moment of perception is like a duet between memory and the present, imagination and truth. Think of walking into your favorite cafe. Before your senses confirm anything, your brain predicts the smell of roasted beans, the hum of quiet chatter, the warmth of light on polished tables. As you step inside, your predictions meet reality, and if something feels off, like the lights dimmed or the music changed, your brain notices. The small spark of surprise you feel isn't annoyance, it's curiosity, your mind updating its model of the world. Prediction keeps you stable, but surprise keeps you alive. This dance of expectation and correction happens in every sense, in every second. As you move through space, your brain forecasts what each next frame of vision will contain. When you reach for a glass, it predicts the weight and temperature your fingers will feel. Even hearing works this way. Your brain anticipates the end of a melody, completing phrases before the final note. That's why the resolution of music feels satisfying. It fulfills a pattern your neurons were already humming. It can be said that perception itself is a kind of controlled hallucination, a world painted from the inside out and constantly compared to what the senses deliver. When the match is close, we call it reality. When it drifts too far, we call it illusion. In truth, both are built from the same process. The difference lies in how tightly the brain's predictions stay tethered to the incoming world. You can test this by looking at optical illusions. A set of lines might appear to bend, or colours might seem brighter than they are. Your eyes haven't failed, your brain has simply over-predicted. It applies rules that usually serve you well, but in these special patterns, those rules misfire. It's the same in daily life when a shadow in the corner looks briefly like a person, or when you mishear a word in conversation. The predictive mind is faster than the senses, and sometimes it races ahead of reality. But far from being a source of error, this predictive rhythm is the foundation of consciousness. It explains why perception feels so immediate, so personal. You don't simply see the world, you experience it through the lens of expectation and meaning. Your mind doesn't wait for the world to reveal itself. It continuously reaches toward it, building a living model of existence from the inside. Every heartbeat, every breath, Every step refines that model. Even emotion follows this pattern. When you expect danger, your body prepares. Pulse quickens, muscles tense. If the danger doesn't arrive, the prediction fades and calm returns. If it does, your body was ready. Anticipation is a form of embodied wisdom, the brain's way of aligning thought with the body's rhythm. Joy, too, involves prediction. The delight of a punchline, the sweetness of a long-awaited reunion, the satisfaction of finishing a melody. Each joy is a fulfilled forecast, a world that matched your hope. Curiosity, then, is the mind's hunger for prediction gaps. It lives in the space between what we expect and what we discover. Children embody this perfectly, constantly testing the world, dropping toys, asking questions, laughing at every new rule they find. They are little scientists of surprise. The brain rewards such exploration with small releases of pleasure, encouraging more learning. In that sense, curiosity is the brain's way of telling itself, keep painting, there's more to see. Yet prediction also carries bias. The same efficiency that speeds understanding can narrow it. When you expect someone to act a certain way, your mind highlights evidence that confirms the expectation and filters out what doesn't. This is the root of prejudice, habit, and assumption. The brain's talent for prediction becomes at times a cage, but awareness of the pattern can soften its grip. When you notice expectation forming, a judgment, a story, a certainty, you can step back and breathe, allowing the next moment to surprise you again. That's what keeps perception alive. Dreams are perhaps the purest form of predictive mind. During sleep, the brain's sensory gates close, but the internal painter keeps working. Without the correction of reality, the predictions run free, creating entire worlds that feel vividly real. In those dream landscapes, the brain rehearses, testing fears, resolving emotions, and practicing creativity. Even here, prediction and imagination intertwine. There's something poetic in the idea that your mind is never merely observing, it's always creating. The world you see is not the raw world. It's your brain's best guess at what's out there, refined by experience, emotion, and expectation. No two people see quite the same sunrise or hear quite the same song, because each mind paints its own version, and yet, through communication, empathy, and shared attention, our internal worlds align closely enough to let us build a common reality together. So, the next time you sip your morning coffee, notice how your senses and expectations merge, the warmth you anticipated, the aroma your memory prepared for, the slight surprise if it's a little too bitter or too sweet. In that tiny gap between prediction and truth, the mind learns. Every perception is a meeting between what the world is and what the self imagines it to be. Perhaps that's what consciousness really is. An eternal conversation between the known and the possible, between what has already been painted and what waits for the next brushstroke. And as we drift onward, we find that this conversation isn't happening in isolation. The same predictive brain that builds your inner world also echoes and responds to others. Our thoughts, emotions, and rhythms begin to synchronize, creating a shared reality greater than any single mind could imagine. The next part of our journey carries us there, into the quiet resonance between minds, the music of empathy, and the deep biological need for connection. You've probably felt it before without realizing how deeply it runs. Someone across the room yawns, and suddenly you do too. A friend stumbles and you wince as if your own knee had struck the edge. You watch a movie character cry, and somehow your eyes sting with tears that don't belong to your life. This is not imagination or imitation. It is resonance, the silent synchrony of brains that have evolved not only to see each other, but to feel each other. Inside your head, this resonance is built from special cells called mirror neurons. But names and numbers only tell part of the story. These neurons are small listeners, tuned to the music of motion and emotion. When you see someone perform an action, or even sense their feeling, these cells echo the same pattern as if you were doing or feeling it yourself. The brain, in a quiet act of empathy, rehearses another's experience within its own circuits. Imagine two instruments across a room. One strikes a note and the other hums in sympathy, strings vibrating in invisible response. That is what happens in your mind every time you witness another person's gesture or expression. Their action becomes your micro-experience. You lift an eyebrow, tilt your head, your body leaning slightly toward their rhythm. The connection is not mental alone. It is physical. This mirroring is the foundation of understanding. Long before we had words, it allowed early humans to coordinate, to comfort, to warn, to share joy. A smile spread through a tribe like sunlight. Fear rippled through it like wind through tall grass. This capacity lives in us still. It is what lets a parent feel a baby's cry in their own chest, what makes laughter spread in a room, what turns performance into communion. You can see it in small everyday dances. Two people walking side by side gradually match their pace. Friends talking begin to use the same gestures or phrases. Even strangers waiting at a crosswalk sway in similar rhythms, guided by an unconscious beat. The brain does this automatically, seeking harmony in movement and emotion. We do not imitate to flatter, we imitate to belong. At the core of empathy lies this biological mimicry, the brain's way of saying, I know this pattern because I can feel it too. When someone smiles, the muscles in your own face flicker in response before you're aware of it. That subtle echo sends signals to emotional centers deep in your brain, producing a hint of the same feeling. To see joy is to taste it. To witness sorrow is to carry a small share of it. This neural mirroring shapes not only how we read others, but also how we understand ourselves. When you watch someone reach for a glass, your brain lights up in areas that would move your own arm. When you see them frown, your emotional circuits activate, sketching the contour of their inner state. By simulating others internally, we build a model of intention, not just what they're doing, but why. Empathy, then, is not a mysterious virtue. It's a form of embodied imagination, where the mind uses itself as canvas to paint the feelings of another. Of course, this resonance has limits. We don't feel every emotion we encounter in full intensity. That would be unbearable. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's wise moderator, keeps empathy balanced, letting compassion guide us without letting pain overwhelm. It's the same reason a doctor can comfort a patient without collapsing under the weight of their suffering, or why a teacher can share a student's frustration yet still offer calm. Healthy empathy is like tuning a radio, enough volume to hear clearly but not so loud that it drowns out your own voice. Mirror systems also shape how we learn. A child watches a parent tie a shoelace or crack an egg, and their brain silently copies the motion. Practice refines it, but understanding begins in observation. This is why teaching by example is so powerful. The brain is wired to learn through shared rhythm, through seeing skill embodied. Even language may have grown from this mimicry, gestures evolving into symbols, sounds mirroring feelings, communication arising from shared experience made visible. There is a quiet poetry in realizing that your nervous system doesn't end at your skin. Through mirroring, it extends outward, blending with the presence of others. Your heartbeat might quicken when someone nearby is anxious, or slow when a loved one takes a calm breath beside you. Empathy is not just mental alignment, it is physiological resonance, a duet played across the space between bodies. Even animals share fragments of this ability. Dogs read human faces and moods, horses match the tension or ease of their riders, dolphins coordinate movements as if sharing a single intention. These echoes remind us that connection is older than language, written deep in the architecture of life. We are social not by choice, but by design. And yet, the modern world often pulls us away from this natural synchrony. Screens replace faces, messages replace voices. We communicate in bursts of text, missing the small gestures and tones that the brain once relied upon to feel together, but the circuitry remains, waiting. Even a single moment of shared laughter, a glance of understanding, or a simple act of kindness can rekindle the resonance. The neurons still know the tune. If empathy begins with mirroring, it finds depth through awareness. When you consciously notice another's expression, the strain around their eyes, the softness of their voice, you let your mirror system do its quiet work. Understanding becomes more than thought. It becomes felt knowledge. This is why compassion feels physical, as if the boundary between self and other thins for a heartbeat. There's a gentle irony in all this. The brain, which spends so much energy maintaining the sense of I, is also the organ that allows that boundary to blur. In the flicker of empathy, the I becomes we. Your neurons hum in tune with another's, and for a moment you share not just information, but existence. So the next time you find yourself moved by someone's joy or pain, pause and recognize what's happening within you. You are witnessing one of the brain's most beautiful talents, the ability to reach beyond its own edges and reflect the world back as feeling. You are, in the truest sense, a mirror of life, and as we drift onward, we'll see that this resonance between minds doesn't stop at the emotional level. It extends deeper, into the rhythm of heartbeats, the pace of breath, the very timing of brainwaves themselves. The next part of our journey takes us there, to the shared rhythm that binds us, how connection becomes harmony, and how belonging nourishes the mind as surely as food nourishes the body. If you sit quietly with someone you trust, you might notice something subtle. Your breathing begins to match theirs. The pace of your heart gently follows the same rhythm. Words fall into shared pauses, and laughter arrives at the same instant without effort. This is not coincidence, it's synchrony, the invisible choreography that links human beings at the most fundamental level. Beneath our conversations and gestures, our bodies are keeping time together, moving to the same internal music. Scientists have begun to measure this phenomenon, calling it physiological synchrony. When two people connect deeply, in friendship, in love, or even during shared focus, their biological rhythms align. Heartbeats slow and quicken together. Brainwaves begin to pulse in similar patterns. Hormones rise and fall in gentle tandem. What we call bonding is not just emotional warmth, it's a physical duet. Connection isn't metaphorical, it's measurable, written into the body's timing. This harmony begins early in life. A newborn's heartbeat stabilizes when held against a parent's chest. The infant's breathing slows, skin warms, stress hormones drop. The parent too feels calmer, as if the two nervous systems were taking turns exhaling for each other. The same happens between adults, lovers resting forehead to forehead, friends walking side by side, teammates sharing focus. Our biology listens and adjusts. Every moment of genuine connection is a tuning session. At the center of this synchrony is a small constellation of chemicals often called social hormones. Oxytocin, for example, is sometimes described as the molecule of trust, though that title is too narrow. It's more like a warm chemical handshake, encouraging the brain to soften its defenses and open its attention to another's presence. Dopamine adds the shimmer of reward, the quiet pleasure that says, yes, stay close. Together they weave the chemistry of companionship, reminding the body that safety often comes in pairs. This interconnectedness explains why loneliness can feel so physical. When we are isolated, the body interprets it as danger, as surely as hunger or thirst. The same regions of the brain that register pain light up when social bonds fray. To the mind, being excluded or forgotten is not a mild discomfort. It's a signal that survival is at risk. In the long arc of evolution, connection meant protection. From cold, from predators, from despair. Solitude, too long sustained, still awakens those old alarms. Yet loneliness is not simply the absence of company, it's the absence of resonance. You can stand in a crowded room and still feel it, that quiet ache of disconnection when no one seems to share your rhythm. What the brain longs for is not noise or proximity, but synchrony, the gentle alignment that whispers, "I see you, I feel you." When it finds that, even brief moments can nourish. A kind word from a stranger, a shared smile, a hand resting on yours. These small gestures carry immense biological power. They tell the body it belongs again. Connection also shapes the very way we think. When people work together closely, their brain activity begins to mirror each other's patterns. In experiments, groups that cooperate successfully show higher synchronization in regions linked to attention and understanding. It's as if teamwork creates a shared field of thought, allowing ideas to move more smoothly between minds. You can feel this when a conversation flows effortlessly, when someone finishes your sentence before you do, or when a creative group seems to generate ideas faster than any one person could alone. The boundaries between individual minds soften, giving rise to a collective intelligence. Many brains humming in one key. Even language itself evolved to sustain this rhythm. Conversation isn't just an exchange of words, it's a dance of timing, tone, and breath. People who feel close naturally fall into similar speech patterns, matching pace, volume, even facial expressions. This isn't mimicry, it's empathy in motion. The nervous system treats synchrony as evidence of safety, and safety allows openness. That's why talking with someone who gets you feels restorative. The brain recognizes another mind moving in harmony with its own. Social synchrony also affects health. Studies show that supportive relationships can strengthen the immune system, improve recovery after illness, and extend lifespan. The reasons are both biological and emotional. When we feel cared for, stress hormones like cortisol decline, the heart beats more smoothly. The body conserves energy once spent on vigilance. Belonging in this sense is medicine. Our biology doesn't distinguish between emotional and physical nourishment. Both are essential for thriving. In moments of connection, even the brain's rhythms change. Electroencephalogram recording, those delicate traces of brain waves, show that when two people engage deeply, their patterns begin to echo each other. The frequencies align, as if the two minds were sharing a single tempo. It's a neurological duet, invisible but real. This harmony may help explain why empathy feels peaceful, why shared experiences strengthen memory, and why solitude sometimes dulls creativity. Our brains were built not for isolation, but for chorus. But connection isn't constant. It's an art that must be practiced. Just as an orchestra must retune its instruments, relationships require attention. The rhythms drift when we rush, when distraction fragments our awareness. You can sense it in conversations that skim the surface, in the dull fatigue that comes from too many digital interactions and too few human eyes meeting. To restore synchrony, slowness helps, shared silence helps. Even sitting together in quiet presence, without words, lets biology do what it knows best: align, regulate, restore. This capacity for resonance reaches far beyond personal bonds. Large groups, audiences, congregations, choirs can enter collective rhythm too. The hum of voices in unison, the applause at the end of a performance, even the hush before a shared moment of awe, all bring hearts and breath into sync. In these rare instances, individuality softens, replaced by a shared pulse that feels larger than any one life. Some describe it as belonging, others as grace. Whatever the name, it's a reminder that connection is not an extra in the human story. it's the stage itself. And though modern life often fragments us, scattering attention across screens and schedules, the wiring for connection has never left. It waits, ready to reawaken at the smallest gesture, a slow exhale beside a friend, a song sung together, the quiet comfort of someone saying, "I understand." Each of these moments restores the ancient rhythm our ancestors once relied upon beside their fires, the rhythm that told them they were safe, that the night was shared, that life was communal. So, the next time you feel calm in someone's company, know that it's more than emotion. Your hearts are literally keeping time together. Your breath and theirs are writing a duet of safety and recognition. You're not imagining harmony, you're living it. And as we follow that harmony toward the final chapters of our story, we turn to fragility, how the brain sometimes falters, and how, even then, it remembers how to heal. For even in disorder, the song continues, learning new melodies through care, rest, and love. If you could look inside the brain after hardship, after illness, loss, or shock, you might expect to find only damage, silence, or despair. But if you watch closely, you would see something else happening there, something astonishingly gentle: repair. Even when neurons fall quiet or connections weaken, the surrounding cells begin to reach out, building new bridges, finding new paths. It is a slow choreography, invisible to the eye but deeply alive, the brain's quiet art of healing. Neuroscience has a soft word for this: plasticity. It means flexibility, the ability to change and adapt. Your brain, far from being a fixed machine, is a living forest. Every thought and experience leaves footprints in that forest, shaping the trails that signals follow. When damage occurs through stroke, trauma, or disease, the forest doesn't simply wither, it reroutes. New paths form around fallen trees, new growth fills the gaps. Recovery is not the restoration of the old, it's the creation of something new that carries the old memory within it. You can see this in those who learn to speak again after losing language, or those who regain movement through slow, patient practice. Each repetition sends signals that encourage the surviving neurons to connect in fresh patterns. The process is neither fast nor perfect, but it's real. Rehabilitation is not magic, it's biology responding to care. Each act of trying, each word spoken, each step attempted, plants new seeds in the neural soil. But healing isn't only about repair after injury. It happens quietly in every life, every day. Stress, fatigue, sorrow, all leave subtle imprints in the mind's landscape. And just as the body needs rest after exertion, the brain needs space to breathe. Sleep is its most powerful remedy. During deep sleep, waves of fluid flow through the brain, washing away the chemical traces of wakefulness. A cleansing tide known as the glymphatic flow. It's as if the mind tidies itself while you dream, clearing the stage for a new day's play. That is why rest feels not only pleasant but essential. It is the body's form of remembering how to begin again. Movement is another form of nourishment. Physical activity increases blood flow, feeding oxygen and nutrients to neural tissue. More than that, it stimulates the release of molecules that encourage new growth, tiny signals that tell the brain, keep building. You don't have to run marathons for this effect. A walk, a stretch, a dance in the kitchen all count. The rhythm of motion reminds the brain that life is still unfolding, still capable of renewal. Learning, too, is a kind of medicine. When you challenge your mind, reading something new, solving a puzzle, exploring a skill, you strengthen connections and encourage the birth of new neurons. Curiosity acts as fertilizer. It feeds the same systems that drive motivation and joy, intertwining pleasure with discovery. Every new experience is a quiet act of healing, proof that the mind story continues to grow. And then there is connection, perhaps the most powerful of all restoratives. The synchrony that links hearts and minds also protects them. Companionship lowers stress hormones, boosts immune function, and enhances resilience after injury. Simply being seen and understood reshapes neural activity, reinforcing safety and calm. This is why support groups help recovery, why friendship lightens sadness, why a gentle hand on the shoulder can make you breathe easier. The brain is social by design. Isolation is its wound, and togetherness its salve. Even within difficulty, this resilience glimmers. Consider epilepsy. Moments when the brain's electrical signals surge in chaos. Between those storms, the same brain returns to rhythm, recalibrating itself. Or dementia, where memories drift away like leaves in wind. Yet often, music, touch, or a familiar scent can awaken fragments of self. The neural forest, though thinning, still responds to warmth and pattern. It remembers in ways we cannot measure. For many conditions, hope lies in this adaptability. Therapies once thought impossible, guiding robotic limbs with thought, restoring sight through implanted electrodes, translating brain signals into speech, now show that the nervous system is capable of rediscovering pathways we once believed lost forever. Each success is a reminder that the brain is not a brittle machine, but a story constantly rewriting itself. Still, healing requires gentleness. Pushing too hard, neglecting rest, or drowning in constant stimulation can exhaust the system meant to protect you. The brain thrives on cycles, activity and quiet, focus and drift. It needs moments without demand, when attention can wander like light through trees. This is why creativity, reflection, and even boredom have value. They allow the mind's deeper layers to restore harmony. So what then does the brain ask of us? Nothing complex, only what it has always known: rest, movement, curiosity, connection, kindness. These are not luxuries, they are the body's oldest medicines. Sleep is the tide that cleans, movement, the wind that strengthens, learning, the sunlight that nourishes, love, the soil that holds it all together. When you care for your brain, you're not indulging it, you're tending the foundation of every thought, dream, and emotion. The neurons that fire when you laugh are the same that help you learn, the same that rebuild after sorrow. Caring for the brain is caring for the self that watches life unfold from within. Sometimes, healing looks ordinary. It's the cup of tea after tears, the walk you didn't want to take but took anyway, the long breath after realizing you've survived what once felt impossible. Each of these moments rewires you slightly, turning pain into resilience, exhaustion into quiet strength. Healing doesn't erase the past, it integrates it, weaving it into a broader pattern of meaning. And as night comes, the brain begins its final ritual of renewal, folding the day's experiences into memory, cleaning its corridors, tuning its rhythms. The same orchestra that once played the music of emotion now hums softly in sleep, preparing for another performance at dawn. So tonight, as you rest, imagine your mind as a vast garden. The day's thoughts settle like fallen petals. The roots stretch, the soil breathes, and somewhere beneath it all new shoots begin to rise. This is healing. Not loud, not sudden, but steady and sure. And as the last thoughts fade into the quiet, remember, your brain asks for what you already love: rest, curiosity, kindness. Give it these, and it will carry you gently through every storm, rewriting itself with every sunrise. In this hush, the long journey of our exploration comes to its close. We have wandered through neurons and dreams, through emotion, creativity, and connection, and now return to where we began, the simple wonder of being alive. The brain, after all, is not just a machine of thought, It is the silent storyteller behind every memory, every love, every breath. And in its patient rhythm, it invites you to rest, to let go, to drift, to trust that renewal is already underway. Good night, dear traveller of thought. May your mind find its own quiet harmony tonight, and wake tomorrow a little stronger, a little brighter, and beautifully alive.